What's new?
Okay.
Hey, Mary, how many people did you have at your house? That is a ton of kids.
Which time? The first time?
That's the one where they welcome back, I guess.
That was at your house?
I had two. I had one a week ago, and then I had one this Sunday.
Okay, there was one where there was like 6, 7 rows of kids. Back.
Do you want to know?
Not into the mic.
Linda. She was just, I crossed her off.
Okay, so it's just
This list.
okay. Okay.
Guess I should have called
So
them.
there's no one on the favoring. Okay.
They're in college.
Great.
They're younger than me, so they're kids.
All right.
My grandma used to call people that are.
We could have everyone take their seats, ready to start this meeting.
Yeah, let's do this. They're not. What is this?
Who's praying? Who's
I don't know. I didn't get the little. Oh, they're over here. Right here. Do you want me to?
Whatever. Whoever is fine.
Got your back, Sam. That was wrong.
I was just. I don't want to interact.
Where is Mayor Pro Tem?
Come on.
Funny, but wrong.
It's 10 after.
Missing one member. Does anybody know if she's out in the back?
Constantly.
I'd like to call this City Council regular meeting, September 16th, Monday, 2019, to order. Please rise, if you are able, for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
O Lord, help us to see beyond the narrow limits of our words and deeds so that we may fully do your will. Grant us the patience to listen, the ability to deliberate, and the wisdom to make decisions that are fair and pleasing in your sight. Help us to remember our goal is not to control, but to serve the people. In Christ's name we ask it. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would the clerk please take roll?
Yes, ma'am. Member Sierra,
Present.
Member Barentine,
Present.
Member Cuesta,
Present.
Member Martinez,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell,
Present.
Member Wink,
Present.
Mayor Olson.
Present.
All 7 present.
Thank you. Agenda item 5 is consideration of minutes of the previous session. Would someone please make a motion to approve the minutes from this meeting?
I move to approve the minutes from the regular city council meeting of September 3rd, 2019.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Member Sierra. Any corrections? Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Just on the draft minutes, it has C and D under 5.
5A, B, and then it has C and D. It is really the minutes of the regular city council meeting of September 3rd. Maybe iCompass puts that on there, but it doesn't have to be in here, correct?
So you're correcting the actual date
The actual
that it is?
draft. The actual draft, and C and D under 5 need to be removed.
That's an incorrect duplication, so we can remove those.
The duplication, all right?
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, with that being duly noted, please vote to approve these minutes.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Agenda item 6 is our Communications, Proclamations, Appointments, and Recognition section. And tonight, we have the South Platte Water Renewal Partners, Director Peter Van Rye here to give us some information about this wonderful award that they have won.
Yes, thank you,
It's
Mayor.
a winning, right? It is a winning.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to be here tonight to share some good news. South Platte Water Renewal Partners is the wastewater plant that's jointly owned between City of Englewood and City of Littleton. And we found out earlier, about a month and a half ago, that we won a $50,000 EPA Nutrient Challenge Prize. And so that is a prize that actually was a challenge that was developed by a collaboration between EPA, the USGS, the Department of Agriculture, the National Institute and Standards, NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, and NOAA, which are the weather people, from what I understand. And so all of these federal agencies put together this challenge that we actually submitted a report on to see if we could win, and lo and behold, we won it. So we won $50,000. There was 2 other winners, and to give you an idea of the diversity of the other winners, one of the other winners was the League of Women Voters of Illinois, who did a data analysis for direct nutrient related to farms. And then the University of New Hampshire, who did an analysis of the nitrate retention for dam removals. And so you can see it's a very diverse prize that we did win. And essentially what it highlights is the wastewater plant utilizes technology, and we use a lot of sensors to understand nutrient levels and chemical dosing levels. And those sensors feed back a lot of information to help us optimize those levels of dosing and make sure that our nutrient levels are meeting our permit. Well, we've been doing this for years. This is something how we use technology to innovate our organization and to get the best information to make really good decisions. I need to highlight one of my engineering staff. Her name is Anna Schrader. She took the time to actually take this information, compile it into a 23-page report, and submit it to the EPA for this challenge. So if she didn't take the time to actually submit for the award, we wouldn't be recognized here and have won this $50,000 award. So it was a lot of her effort, taking all this data, crunching it together, and compiling it to meet this requirements of the award that ultimately allowed us to win. And so I think it really highlights how we are continually innovating at the plant. We utilize technology to make data-driven decisions, to make good decisions, and really, for every now and then we get awarded and rewarded for this and recognized. And as someone once said, anytime the EPA is giving you money, it's probably a good thing. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you. What was the staff member's name that compiled that information?
Her name is Anna Schrader. She's in our engineering department.
And if I understand correctly, she just did that on her own initiative?
Yeah, she was looking for potential additional funding sources that we could potentially, take advantage of, and came across this one and thought, wow, this is something we could potentially win.
Very good. Kudos to Ms. Schrader. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Congratulations. I'm very thankful for the innovative work of the department, but also the person. And so the $50,000, what are you all doing with it?
Well, so essentially the $50,000 gets split between the 2 cities, so it's a revenue to the 2 cities. And we'll take that money and we'll invest it into more of the instrumentation and and data gathering tools that we use to make better decisions. So it'll come back into the fund as a whole, but we have needs in this area of instrumentation, so we'll earmark that money for that.
Great, congratulations.
Thank you.
Very much.
Member Martinez?
I just want to say congratulations, and I'm continually impressed by the innovation from your team, and you're always utilizing the technology you have to find new ways of doing things, and I think it's really cool, and it's something really impressive for our community to be proud of. So congratulations to you and your team.
Well, thank you.
Councilmember Barentine?
Congratulations as well. You didn't ask the city manager what he wanted to do with the money? You just went ahead and...
Yeah, we will consult with the supervisory committee as it relates to what we want to do with the money.
And in all fairness, you guys earned that, so I hope that it goes to some things that you believe are good for what you're trying to accomplish there. I think that you've set an amazing culture in your organization in a very short period of time, and I've been very impressed with what you've been able to do, and certainly that your employees are reaching out and feel comfortable to be able to do these kind of things speaks well of you as well in this community, our government. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Would the public please join us in thanking him and congratulating?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Our next item is 7, recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up to speak for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. Only those who meet this deadline can speak in this section. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. This includes refraining from insults, accusations, or any name calling, those kinds of things. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. Please limit your presentation to 5 minutes, and with written material for presentation to the council, please submit it to the city clerk as the speaker approaches the podium, and a USB port is available for public presentation. Once we're finished with both this and the recognized or the unscheduled public comment, then I think it's Councilmember Wink tonight is going to be making some comments and council requests based on the things that you bring to us. So first up tonight is Ms. Judith Marienthal, an Englewood resident, here to address council regarding single hauler trash options. And then just state your name in the mic, and if you want, what district you live in, or whether you live in the city or not is fine too.
My name is Judith Marienthal. I live in Englewood. And excuse the sunglasses, my eyes are still dilated.
Ooh, glad you're still here.
I do have some handouts for you for your bedtime reading, if somebody wants to get them. I don't know.
Maybe we can have you bring them over there, or have someone get them for you.
These were sent to me by my son who lives in Switzerland regarding the rubbish police that they have there. Thank you for listening. Thank you. So 15 years ago, I moved from Denver to Englewood. It would be a struggle to cart the city's containers to the curb and back 2 times per week to the point of injury. I have no driveway, live on a hill, and nowhere to store the containers on the property. The properties are small, there's sprinkler heads, etc. I also would have nowhere to park my car on the street. I've spoken with seniors in Denver, and it has been very difficult for them. When I was in my 20s and lived near Lowry, I carted my trash to the street. I did not like it then and would certainly not like it now. Since that time, I have always emptied the trash along the alley. Alleys are a unique aspect of the Denver area and are very convenient. Since acquiring my former trash company, I have been with the current company for many years and pay a reasonable price. I might have been grandfathered in at that rate. I have 2 containers with secure lids and a cart so they do not blow down the alley. The cart is kept on my property bordering the alley. I do not have to call ahead if I want to put out an area rug, etc., nor does it have to be tied a certain way, which offers no flexibility. Primarily, it has been my experience that monopolies are never good for the consumer, whether it be private industry or government, example being Xcel Energy. At least for now, I have done my own negotiating with companies. If disputes reach a certain threshold, I report concerns to the appropriate authority for assistance in resolution. I live south of Hamden, and my utility bill is already higher because of the contracted sanitation station. The trash issue should be put to a vote by residents. My suggested solution would most likely be unpopular, would raise property taxes, and have been told not feasible. The alley should be paved and the drainage issues addressed. For input, check with Littleton to see how it has managed these issues. Ultimately, it would most likely increase property values and make it easier access for those who have detached garages. As with streets, ongoing maintenance would be required, but the major issues would be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your coming forward.
Did you want a copy of this also?
Certainly, you can give us a copy of your written if you'd like. If you want to give it to the city clerk, you sure may. We've got your other handout. Thank you very much. Next up is C.N. Dickerson, an Englewood resident, here to speak to council. No topic given.
C.N. Dickerson, District 1. I believe you're all trying to do what's best for the city, but you're not thinking things through. You're not looking at the long-range consequences. Inglewood has been overrun with development, and the perception of many citizens, including myself, is that we give Inglewood away to developers. There are many factors involved in this perception, and there are many facts. Inglewood is already more dense than almost any city in Colorado. It's more dense than Denver, and I believe it's more dense than Littleton and Sheridan. Even though one of the prevailing arguments is that Inglewood has aging, if not derelict, housing stock, what is readily apparent is that the newest construction, especially the high-rise apartments, are not well built at all. Traditions is a case in point, for instance, where water is running down the inside of walls and the building is deteriorating significantly. I have heard many people say we have no choice, development is coming. Development is here, and you've known for many years, even with the increased development and apartment complexes, that our population has not increased significantly. It has stayed within a range since the 1970s when it was at its highest point, and it has never exceeded that high point and been significantly lower for most of the last 3 decades, despite the flurry of duplex and apartment complex being built with taxpayer dollars, like the Broadway Acoma Lofts and Alta Cherry Hills on Broadway and Kenyon, to mention 2 examples. One factor in this flurry of high-rise development, including duplexes, is the ill-advised change in the bulk plane from 12 feet and 22 feet in height to 17 feet and 32 feet height limitations. And lot coverage. Worse yet, the 32 feet is an average, so you can have part of your house 42 feet or higher and another roof line less. And if the average is only 32 feet, well, that's allowed by community development. Then there's lot coverage, which exempts concrete patios and driveways and walks and paths. This results in many, many cases of a single-family residence having more than 80% lot coverage and 80 to 95% lot coverage for duplexes, not to mention the parking problems, the heating of the atmosphere, the lack of water absorption, which will increase storm drainage issues. And then there's the fact that you do no impact fees for this higher density. Our tap fees are virtually non-existent for developer projects. We've ended up paying for all the traffic lights and traffic impacts and stormwater drainage for all the development, regardless of the size. And that's a big part of why there is a perception of developer bias and giving away the store to developers and get nothing. We pay for the infrastructure, we pay for the tap fees, and developers get to build their shoddy buildings, destroy neighborhoods, make a fortune, and leave us with the problem. And that brings up the issues of ADUs that can be used by ordinance as STRs. Not only can it increase the density, but it can increase the problem. If STRs are currently illegal, has been said, then how did the ordinance you pass on ADUs say they can be used for short-term rentals? Does that not imply and suggest or make STRs legal by ordinance? Roll back the bulk plane to 12 feet and 25 feet in height. Establish impact fees and raise the tap fees for developers to $20,000. Make the duplexes fit the character of the neighborhood, not overpower and destroy the established neighborhoods and single-family homes. Do not make exceptions on lot coverage for solid concrete driveways and patios. Maximize the permeable surfaces to reduce the possibility of flooding and storm drainage impact. Do establish a moratorium until you can change the UDC and Title 16, set impact and tap fees, and work out in detail the long-range consequences of what you're doing and what has been done.
Thank you very much for coming. Next is Tammy Williamson, an Englewood resident, here to speak to council regarding short-term rentals.
Hello, I'm Tammy Williamson, Inglewood resident. I'd like to start by saying that when you have to get a license to breed dogs and cats, and you also have to get a license to run a daycare in this city. And in each case, as shown here, you need to obtain signatures from each adjoining landowner expressing consent and acknowledging that they have no objection to the issuance of the license. There is no such thing in the rules proposed by Planning and Zoning, and there should be, because at least in my opinion, toddlers and kittens are far less destructive than short-term rentals. It should be on there. Also, for bed and breakfasts, don't allow more than 6 guests for a bed and breakfast. But the problem with short-term rentals is short-term rentals artificially inflate rental costs. Short-term rental operators have figured out how to profit from evading city laws and converting long-term living spaces into short-term rentals. That means fewer homes on the market for families and long-term renters. STRs make it impossible for most families to live in their current neighborhoods. As long-term renters get priced out of our neighborhoods, who remains? Only those who already own their home. So say goodbye to new families, young couples, and anyone who can't compete with a vacationer's budget. Bye-bye affordable housing, bye-bye all of that. Short-term rentals attract disruptive visitors. The influx of out-of-town visitors upsets the peaceful enjoyment of long-standing residential neighborhoods. They have no stake in the community and no reason to care how the neighborhood around them suffers from their vacation activities. Zoning laws keep hotels out of our single-family residential neighborhoods and exist to accommodate the inevitable disruptions of tourism. They are unfair to the hotel industry and threaten the jobs of hotel workers. STRs ignore zoning restrictions and make virtually any residence into a hotel/party house. They hardly ever obey house rules or use designated parking spaces, and more often than not, it's not just them at the residence. It's all their friends and family as well. Why? Because it's far better to have someone else clean up your mess, and the cleaning deposit is already paid. And for information, a party of 4 produces 3 cans of trash or more in 3 days. Imagine 8 people. Plus, it doesn't matter to them if they piss off the neighbors because they will never have to face any of us again. It's insulting that Planning and Zoning thinks that 8 people occupancy is okay. 8 people was the average number of next door to me. And any party over 4 is a party, and every whole house rental is a party house. Facts. This is an undisputable fact. We experienced it every day for a year and a half. There is no proof whatsoever of a dire need for traveling nurse housing or patient family housing. Eric Sampson said so himself under oath at the short-term rental public discussion on June 3rd. Anecdotal was the best he could come up with when asked. Also, traveling nurses can make around $200,000 a year. They are not the poor, needy volunteers that Planning and Zoning makes them out to be. It is unfair to force the residents of Inglewood to shoulder the burdens that the hospitals have created just so a scant few greedy narcissists can get rich. There's a very problematic loophole in the proposed rules. You don't need a 24/7 property manager if the owners are supposedly really going to occupy the property. It doesn't make any sense to honest people. And there's no real punishment for unlawful STRs, none. There has been no real punishment for the guy next to me. He will be free and clear to open up his motel again in April as if nothing happened, and I quote that. He has moved back into his basement and taken his house off the market and trying to get his garage up to code. The biggest thing wrong with the proposed rules is the complete disregard for the surrounding neighborhoods. In order to get a license to breed your cat, you have to obtain signatures of all surrounding neighbors expressing content. Yes, I'm repeating myself. To get a license to open a small daycare, you also need to do this. Having a constant stream of strangers coming and going in residential neighborhoods around other people's children is far more dangerous than kittens and toddlers, yet they don't feel that longtime homeowners should be informed or asked if they're okay with the guaranteed hassles they're going to get.
Thank you. Can you please finish up your last sentence?
One more sentence. STRs have no place in R1 zones, and planning and zoning has no right to trample the single-family zoning we have invested our lives and our money in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barrington has a question for you, I believe. Would you mind staying at the podium for a minute?
Thank you very much. I think that we've established that the short-term rentals, anything under 30 days in a residential area, is not legal, and that the city is enforcing that. Has it not been enforced to the neighbor next to you?
I wouldn't know. When he first moved back, he had a woman there from Idaho for 3 days. I don't know who she was or what she was doing there, but she was there for 3 days and then left.
Okay, then you may want to go ahead and speak. I mean, the city manager has spoken to a couple of the people that are doing prosecutions and.
Councilmember Barrington, this is time to ask questions, not to give advice yet.
Oh, I apologize for that. I am so sorry, Ms. Williamson.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Marcy Brown, here to speak to council, no topic given.
Hello, good evening. It's Marcy Brown, District 1. I gave the city clerk my handouts. I hope you have them in front of you. The first handout is a postcard. It's regarding Inglewood candidate forums. On this card is printed the address, the candidates that are running for a political office, and the dates when these debates are to be held. Nowhere on this card is a telephone number or the name of the place where this forum is to be held. It's a church called Sacred Heart. Well, I have a few problems with the political function such as this being held in a church. My first problem is, it's a church. Our country is based on separation of church and state, so why are we holding a political debate in a church? My second problem is, why are candidates asked to donate $50 apiece? There's 8 candidates scheduled to speak, which adds up to $400. Each debate is scheduled for only an hour. You don't need to serve refreshments like the card states, so how is that $400 being spent? My third problem is, how do I know as a voter that one or more candidates are not a member of this church or have strong political ties with this institution and might be shown partiality? I'm a taxpayer. Churches do not pay taxes. And again, it's about separation of church and state. A proper place to hold a debate should be held in a public, nonpartisan space. I think this debate needs to be canceled for the reasons I have just stated. The second handout is a total of 6 pages, but it is divided into 2 pages for each of the 4 cities listed. This information comes from the Census Bureau dated 2018. I've given you the list of cities in order from the smallest city per square miles to the largest city in square miles. These forms follow the same format. First city is Sheridan. At the top of the page, the population is 6,164. At the bottom of the page, I'm sorry, at the bottom of the next page, excuse me, the second page, under geography, the land area in square miles is 2.22. Second city is Englewood. Population is 34,690. Land area in square miles is 6.56. Third city is Littleton. Population is 48,007. Land area in square miles is 12.98. Fourth city is Denver. Population is 716,492. Land area in square miles is 153. So Sheridan, which is the smallest in square miles, and I'm rounding off the numbers, has 2,777 people per square mile. Littleton has 3,699 people per square mile. Denver, the largest city, has 4,683 people per square mile. And Inglewood, the second smallest city, has 5,288 people per square mile. That, to me, is a shocking number for such a small city as ours. And remember, this census is from 2018. I can't imagine how many more people have moved into our city in 2019. So why are we still scraping houses, building duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, ADUs, PUDs, and apartment buildings? I feel like Inglewood citizens are being crammed in the city like a can of sardines. I'm sure the other cities I mentioned have better infrastructures and better drainage systems than Inglewood, yet we are still allowing developers to do whatever they please in our city. After finding out this information, if I had a wish list, I would now ask for a moratorium until the 2020 census data comes out. If that isn't possible, then the bulk plan needs to be reversed, and soon. It can be done as early as October before elections take place, because for the welfare of our city and our neighborhoods, I want to know who is for the changes and who are not before I cast my vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. The next is Steve Ward, an Englewood resident, here to speak to council regarding the 2020 budget. All right, reserve your publics for the public hearing. Great, thank you. Next is our unscheduled public comment. The same sort of guidelines are relevant to this section as well. First person up tonight is Ms. Andrea Mannion at 3265 South Washington, here to speak about universal business license and sales tax.
Good evening, Andrea Mannion, District 1. I want to talk about the CB 25 bill, the universal business license that you have a second reading on tonight. And I just wanted to clarify some confusion. So I am a tax accountant. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's degree in tax. I have 15 years experience filing sales and use tax, including on the collection and audit side with the Colorado Department of Revenue and Arapahoe County. So I just wanted to make clear, I know last council meeting there was some confusion. There was a $1,050 amount thrown around, which is incorrect. I think so. There was confusion that people thought if a business made $30,000 plus a year, that they would have to automatically pay a 3.5% use tax on that. And that is not correct. That's more of like an income tax. Use tax is only for goods that you purchase for your business that you did not buy sales tax on. So this bill, again, is only requiring, businesses that make over $30,000 to get a license. And if they have any use tax liability, which it may be very low, then they would have to file and they'd be subject to audit. So, and I also looked at all the other neighboring home rule cities. Greenwood Village, Denver, Littleton, Lakewood, and Centennial all require licenses for all types of businesses, whether they're home-based service businesses or not. So in all those cities, every business has to get licensed, every business has a use tax liability, and none of them have a de minimis rule. Only Sheridan doesn't require home-based service businesses to get a license, but they still require them to file a use tax. So technically, we all have a liability as a business to file use tax, whether we're licensed or not. So I just want to say that I do commend staff for all the recommendations they took from ACE with the amnesty period, the de minimis rule, and the education, and that Inglewood would be the only home rule city with this de minimis rule, so we would be unique, and I think it would be beneficial for small businesses. And myself, I would have to apply for this license because as a home-based service business myself, over $30,000, I would have to get a license and file. And I'm just telling you, I agree with this bill. I still think that it's business-friendly, and I agreed with all the language in it. So just wanted to state that.
Thank you very much for coming. Councilmember Barentine has a question for you, and then Councilmember Cuesta.
I asked last time about what the formula was for the de minimis tax, and what they were doing was taking the total of the gross and doing it by 3.5. That would be the entire.
Right, that would be their entire
the entire
sales.
piece. But that's what we were told it was. So how are you looking at this, that you're okay with that? Because that would end up being charged on the labor, everything for the business, for the gross that it made. So that's what was explained.
Yeah, well, because in the bill, it says it's a 3.5% use tax. And use tax is only applied on items that you didn't pay sales tax on. So it's not an income tax, it's not even a sales tax.
How do you see that in the bill being brought out so that it would be separated out?
Just the fact that they label it as a use tax. It's just like the definition of use tax. I think it's going to be important for obviously the city to communicate this fact and educate people on, so they understand what a use tax is and exactly what their liability is and what they're responsible for, so that people understand. So if I say I went and bought office supplies on the internet to use at my home business here in Englewood, and that internet provider did not charge me sales tax, then what I purchased there, I would be required to pay the 3.5% use tax to Englewood on that I'm using here for my business. But most people, are probably already paying sales tax on their office supplies and whatnot for their service businesses. So it's going to be very little liability as far as what people have to pay and send in, which they're responsible for anyway.
I just
whether
have
you're
one more
licensed or
quick
not.
question, and that is, it was my understanding that the reason they were doing the de minimis tax was to go ahead and avoid the problem of having somebody be audited, that it was a convenience thing, and the ease of that was to just go ahead and take your total gross times the 3.5%. How is that going to ease it up on people that are under 30,000 then?
Well, the people under 30,000 would be exempt from audits and having to have a reporting with a license. So
you would think that it's basically what they're saying? What they provide to us is what you believed was going to happen?
not with the gross sales times 3.5%. No, that's not a use tax.
Okay, so
Would they-
you believe that the
Councilmember
way it's...
Barentine, I'm worried a little bit that this has become a sort of an agenda item. Do you have another question that would?
I just want, then you believe that what the ACE committee was supporting was that under 30,000, no audit, and basically whatever somebody came forward with and said, this is my use tax, that's what is going to happen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you.
Also have a question.
Thank you, Ms. Manning, I appreciate the insight. You mentioned that you support the measure. Are you able to speak on behalf of ACE and to say whether or not they support as well?
Well, I'm no longer the chair, but at the time when staff came for our recommendations, I was the chair. And like I said, we had all three of those recommendations. We had a long amnesty period to allow those to, so you can't go back on 10 years or whatever. And that education, so the word gets out, and then that sales limitation. So now that they added the de minimis rule, I think, they took all of ACE's recommendations, so I hate to speak on behalf of ACE, but those were all the recommendations we made. So.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Next is Mr. Doug Cohn, here to speak about water history.
Good evening, Doug Cohn, 3051 South Marion Street. I wanted to finish the story of the history of Inglewood's water. I got halfway through last time. From 1909 to 1952, Inglewood got the water mains and the water either from the Denver Union Water or later, from after 1918, the Denver Water Board. In 1948, the Denver Water Board issued new rules for selling water to Inglewood. The 1909 contract was canceled. Water rates were increased by 50%. Water mains and meters had to be installed at customer expense. Water rates would be renegotiated every year. Inglewood would have to sign an agreement stating that the Denver Water Board was not a public utility, subject to the regulation of the Public Utilities Commission. Inglewood officials were furious. Enter Charles Allen, elected mayor in 1948. He was well aware of Inglewood's water problems, as he had to drill 2 wells to supply the water to his own creamery business on Broadway that he started in 1944. In October 1948, Inglewood voters authorized the sale of $2 million in bonds to purchase the water rights and build a water treatment plant. The city purchased the Atchison Ranch at the mouth of Waterton Canyon for its water rights. They sold the ground to a brand new company called Martin Marietta. The only way to get the water to the new plant would be to put it in the South Platte River and then take it out near the water plant. He and the council got it done. It took a long, lengthy legal battle because the Denver Water Board says, well, the water in the river is ours. If you put it in, it's ours. Charles Allen and Irving Jean Mock found the water attorneys, and they won in the court, and Inglewood got its water rights. With the completion of the plant, Inglewood became independent of Denver. Inglewood bought the Denver water pipe system, too. The water plant was finished in 1952. The city purchased water rights from the Brown, McBroom, and Petersburg ditches. It bought the Boreas Pass ditch in South Park, which diverts water across the divide from the Breckenridge area, as well as other water sources. Inglewood became the first Denver water customer to create its own water system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Vicky Hoffman, here to speak about drainage.
Good evening, Council. Vicky Hoffman, District 4. Tonight I'm here to talk about the proposed master plan for the water, sewer, and stormwater in the amount of $391,000. With that, I'm also against the budget, and I know that that's later, but I'll tell you why. There's no mention of any sort of money to go towards drainage. I became a member of the South Englewood Sanitation District recently, and our house is also in there. And anytime Inglewood raises their sewer fees, South Englewood Sanitation also raises our fees. So in addition to 7%, we also get extra. Now let's talk about the S3 pipe. What happened to it? I haven't heard about anything. Nothing. It's been taken off the agendas. It's not on a study session. And this is upsetting. We've been over a year, can't fix up our basements. People still don't have any idea what to do. Now we have 2 houses on a coma that are for sale. That's pretty scary. After some inquiries that I've looked into, I see a lot of people have issues with brown water. And my question for you is, because I don't know, I'd really like to see it on a council request. Director DeAndrea says that the pipes are corrugated metal. I'd like to know if they're aluminum or galvanized. If they're galvanized, that could potentially lead to lead in our water. The school systems are adding filtration systems in, is my understanding. So is that to eliminate lead in schools? Is that to not be honest with people that we have a water issue? So I'd like to see some money allocated in this budget towards fixing the S3 pipe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Janice Brown, here to speak about Be a Tool.
Janice Brown, I live in District 3. First, I would like to congratulate Dorothy Hargrove on being named Deputy City Manager. You proved yourself to the City of Englewood when you bravely took on the role of Interim City Manager. I am delighted you have accepted this position. I would like to thank everyone involved in the Day of Service, Be a Tool, Workday, September 7th. It was a huge success for the Inglewood community, helping the elderly and disabled with home projects they cannot get done by themselves. From the people of Spirit of Hope Methodist Church, who made lunches and allowed us to use their facility to registration and staging, to Nixon's Coffee, who supplied breakfast, thank you. To Sean Lewis, Linda Olson, Nathaniel Sierra, and the 200-plus volunteers of all ages that showed up and made the work happen, thank you. For Craig Hospital, who worked on one project that required 24 volunteers to complete, you are so appreciated. To all the sponsors, from the Inglewood Grand to the Breakfast Queen, from Unite Inglewood to the City of Inglewood, thank you for your support. I especially want to thank Tony Arnaldi and Kay Sue Anderson for their organization skills. You got everyone to their projects in their new t-shirts and fed them all. I am certain I have forgotten some whose support was so vital, but please know I am grateful for everyone who supported or volunteered on the Day of Service. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our unscheduled portion of public comment, and here to respond tonight is Councilmember Cheryl Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Judith Marienthal, Colleen Dickerson, Tammy Williamson, Marcy Brown, Andrea Mannion, Doug Cohn, Vicky Hoffman, and Jan Brown for coming forward to share your opinions and concerns with us this evening. I derive no council requests based on tonight's comments and want to share/remind you all that, one, the City of Englewood will be hosting another community workshop to discuss single hauler trash options. It's titled Trash and Talk. It will be next week, Thursday, September 26th, correct? At 5 p.m. in the community room just adjacent to council chambers. Secondly, council is scheduled to hold a public hearing on a short-term rental ordinance on Monday, October 7th. That's it, and thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. That concludes our public section for public comment tonight. Next up is our consent agenda items. Could I have a motion to approve 9A1 and 9C1?
I move to approve consent agenda items 9A1 and 9C1.
Thank you. Could I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. We have a public hearing for agenda item 10. The city charter requires a public hearing of the budget in order to obtain comments and questions from the community regarding the proposed 2020 budget prior to city council considering an ordinance for the adoption of the budget. And so tonight we have Director Maria Sabata of our Finance and Administrative Services to give us information and for us to ask questions and then to open up for the public to give their comments. And I believe that we've decided we will open this as a public hearing right now from the beginning. Is that correct, City Clerk? Sorry, we've been going back and forth about how to do this correctly. So I would like to hear a motion to approve, to open our public hearing.
I move that we open the public hearing for the proposed 2020 budget.
Thank you. And could I have a second?
A second.
Councilmember Sierra seconded. All right. Then each one that comes up to do anything will be sworn in as well.
Can you raise your right hand, please? All right. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Inglewood City Council?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and title for the record.
My name is Maria Sabata, and I'm the Director of Finance.
I think we need to, did you do the motion and second to open?
Yep.
And did you vote?
No.
Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to catch up here.
All right. We did the, we've sworn you in. Please vote to open it up. Thank you.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
No wonder you looked so puzzled at me.
Hold on.
All right. Now we're open and
I
she's
thought
sworn
maybe
in.
I missed something.
Do you
All right.
swear her in again?
Yes. Okay.
Sorry for that.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Inglewood City Council?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and title for the record.
I'm Maria Sabata, the Director of Finance for the City of Englewood. It's official?
Yes, we got it all set now. So please give us your presentation
Great.
and we'll have a few questions from council, I'm sure.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council, and the public that is joining us tonight. We will be reviewing the budget this evening. We have had an opportunity over the past several months to review the items that we will be discussing tonight and hearing from the public regarding. In the first quarter, we reviewed the budget assumptions, including revenue and the expenditure forecast. We moved forward into the second quarter, and we actually did have workshops, and also we looked for your input on the capital project list that we put forth that was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. As we move forward into the third quarter, we held several study sessions where we asked for discussion by the council regarding the requests that have moved forward. And based on input and discussion, we've moved forward with the proposed budget that was included in the budget book and also in the communication that was shared with the public last week. And you can see what's, we'll talk about what's to come after we walk through the presentation. So throughout the several months that we have been working with the council in looking towards 2020, there are a couple of major themes that we have continued to hear. What we have heard is that council and the public was looking for a balanced proposed 2020 budget, and we'll definitely talk about that as we move forward. Improve storm drainage system, fix the alleys and maintain streets, address code enforcement, provide emergency management, ensure a well-planned redevelopment, provide effective online services, to continue to keep council and the citizens informed, to upgrade our parks and improve recreation services, and to consider trash hauler options. I think with the budget that we have put forth, many of these items have been addressed, and there is funding that has been requested. So this is a picture of all of our funds for the proposed 2020 budget with our estimated year-end balance of in 2019 of approximately $59 million. Our estimated sources are $105.7 million. Our proposed uses are $120 million with an estimated year-end fund balance at the end of 2020 of $44.7 million. The general fund is a portion of this, and one of the reasons, and we'll talk about this, the capital funds, for example, if we don't, this includes all of our project spending too. So depending upon the timing of spending in those, you could have uses in those particular categories of project spend that exceed the sources for that particular year. But we do have available funds, and we are proposing that all funds are in a positive balance at the end of 2020. I included, excuse me, I included all of the proposed sources and uses of funds within all of the funds in great detail within this package so that it could be reviewed prior to the meeting. The numbers are relatively small, but this gives you an idea for the each of the funds, what the estimated fund balance is that comprises the figures that I just mentioned before, what the sources are, and the uses and the ending balance. For the general fund, our estimated year-end fund balance is $19.2 million at the end of 2019. The amount that remains available above the reserve policy is estimated to be approximately $8.6 million, with an additional Tabor reserve of $1.7 million. We spoke last week that on an as-needed basis, the fund balance will be decreased incrementally up to $3 million for a loan to the storm drainage fund. And I mentioned last week that we would be issuing an RFP to begin a search for a firm that would be able to assist us in assessing what other municipalities pay as far as fees to support that, as a way to look forward into coming back into next year and discussing a bond issuance. So we are moving forward, and that RFP was issued on Friday. The 2020 estimated sources of funds, $53.1 million, and our 2020 proposed uses within the general fund, $53.1 million, with a 2020 estimated year-end fund balance of $19.2 million. And again, the available amount above the policy is estimated to remain unchanged at $8.6 million, and the additional Tabor reserve at $1.7 million. The general fund has been balanced. I also included a detail of the revenues and expenditures and where the particular components of each source and use of fund by department makes up the general fund balance. And we've had considerable conversations over the past several months regarding the specific components of each of the expenditures, including the salaries and benefits, and any of the proposed requests that comprise these numbers. Some of these expenditures include emergency management, the crisis intervention co-responder services. Last week we talked about the neighborhood resource coordinator, the wayfinding signage and placemaking design manual, the homeless camp abatement, city center redevelopment, critical public works positions, the utility budget system, and a request for human resources information system. To highlight some of our capital requests, the Broadway US 285 interchange reconstruction, the Dartmouth Bridge, additional funding for that, IT projects such as the rugged computers and fiber network, and pavement maintenance and alley improvements. And last week during our discussion, you had asked for additional information regarding the years following regarding the fiber network, and that was included in your council communication. So I wanted to talk about the capital projects funds. Specifically, we're leaving the year estimating with a year-end fund balance of $6.7 million. The estimated sources of funds is $4.6 million. The proposed uses is $10.3 million, with our estimated year-end fund balance of $1 million. So again, part of the reason that the uses exceed the sources is because of the timing of projects. So we do use the fund balance, the available fund balance, for example, in capital projects moving forward because you have previously approved those projects for spending. And this gives you another view of that fund balance and how it's split between the two, or I should say the three capital projects funds, including the police building construction fund. And you can see the project capital request for this year is $7.274 million. And I included detail because this is a change, one change that was made based on the discussion that we had last week, and a determination by staff that the alley improvements, the material that is being used, the life exceeds our one-year requirement for capital expenditure. So as you read in your council communication, we kept the Public Works operating budget whole. It originally had $220,000 of operating expense for alley improvements in it. We actually increased our capital spending from $7 million to $7.2 million. And at the same time, you had asked us to reduce the audiovisual, or to remove the audiovisual for council chambers and repurpose that for alley improvements. So we have a total of $420,000 now in alley improvements in capital. So the operating budget for Public Works remained the same, and the intent and the request is that as a suggestion was made by council that there is a need for Public Works additional staff, that those monies be reserved in the budget or requested for the budget for additional Public Works staff. But the offset, well, what we did was we increased capital, so not operating expenses, in order to achieve the request that we request $420,000 for alley improvements. So as we discussed last week, our proposed 2020 budget is balanced, but again, the city does continue to face challenges because we do have a lack of revenue diversity, because approximately 61% of our revenue is sales and use tax, and it does require a strong retail support. We have a proposed 7% sewer utility rate increase. This is the only proposed rate and fee increase. But as we have discussed in several sessions, it won't fully support our ongoing capital maintenance and operations needs. Our healthcare premium rates include a cap for 2021 and 2022. However, there will be additional increases in each year based on the discussions that we are having with the providers. And of course, we do have growing community expectations regarding the level of service that needs to be balanced with the people that we have currently to do the work and available funding. So our next step, after the public hearing tonight, is listening to all of you, answering your questions, and moving forward with another discussion next week, and discussing the things that we talk about tonight. And then moving towards the first and second readings in October 7th and October 21st. So with that, I will open it up for questions.
All right. Council, we'll let you start. Do you have questions for Ms. Savannah? Mayor Pro Tem?
One of the questions that I have is, what are we doing with the savings from the Director of Utilities that we no longer have?
So that is a very good question. I would need to actually ask if Director DeAndre is here, or if there is a member of staff that might be able to answer that question.
Thank you, Director DeAndre, and please be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Englewood City Council?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and title for the record, please.
Maria DeAndre, Director of Public Works. So the position is still in the budget. It is funded. So the intent is to evaluate how the utilities department is structured, possibly in combination with Public Works or without, and that will take at least another couple of months. So we're moving forward as if there is no combination at this point, and that position is fully funded in the 2020 budget.
Okay, so that was my main question. This budget doesn't allow for combining departments?
Not at this time, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Questa.
Thank you. And
Oh.
Mayor DeAndrea, this question may go, excuse me, Mayor, pardon me. Thank you, Mayor. Director DeAndrea. This question might go your way as well. So we discussed postponing the audiovisual repairs, and in lieu of that, doing more repurposing of the alleys. City Manager Lewis, you briefly explained the process of how those alleys are repurposed, and it sounded like something different that I had heard of before, and I had another citizen raise this question with me. Can either of you explain what that will do for the alleys and what it will look like after as opposed to before with these improvements we're making?
Sure. So the work that we're undertaking right now with our city staff, we're going through basically grading out the potholes, making them level again. We're also adding asphalt millings to the surface, where before we used sort of a road-based mix, which had a lot of dirt in it. So we're using a different material to try and stabilize the surface. What we're doing with what we call phase 2, or that subsequent phase, is we'll actually go in and do fine grading, which means that we'll create a slight V down the middle of the alley, and then we'll treat that so to improve the drainage and get it away from people's houses. So we want to invert the crown, if you will. Right now, most of them are very flat. We also have the issue of where the dirt has been raised to such a level that it's creating a slight barrier, if you will, from people if draining out of their garages or from their alley or driveways. And so we want to create that inverted crown, and then we're going to come back with a topical treatment which acts as both a dust suppressant and a material. It's a liquid that's sprayed on with water, so it acts as both a dust suppressant, and it sets up that top inch or so to be kind of it stabilizes the fines within that material and makes a hard crust. And so that's to keep down in the dust and create and limit that washboarding and potholing.
Thank you. And I think it's that last part, crust was the term you used, and I think that you had mentioned the same thing, City Manager Lewis. What is the lifespan of that when that takes place in an alley? Expected lifespan?
Yeah, it can vary. So we were, in past experience, on a very heavily traveled, high-volume road. We were getting about a year to a year and a half. With a lower volume and lower speeds, we anticipate that that should last at least 2 to 3 years, hopefully. But we have not done it yet in an alley, so.
In at least that final layer that you're discussing, the crust, that is a new process. We have not used that thus far in the city.
That's correct, yeah.
Oh, very good. Well, I'm really happy about that. Again, I've had a few neighbors contact me, and I think we're at about 40% if we cut out the audio-visual, getting to 40% of the alleys. And it seems like it's reasonable enough that we might be able to, that we've got the funds if we wanted to, that maybe we could shoot for 100. So it is something that I'd like to keep discussing. But I'm really happy with the 40, and thank you for explaining that process.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. So I actually would like to follow up on that since you're still here. So you think it is 40%? I think we thought it might be closer to 50. Is it really 40%?
So we're going out for bids right now. We did have some money in the budget in the road and bridge that we wanted to try this. So we're starting, we're going to go out for bids yet this fall to try and do some of this work, and then that will give us an idea of how much it costs too. So we're guessing right now a little bit. But yeah, we're intending to do about 60 of the alleys yet this fall. And then that's primarily in the area of south of Oxford and west of Broadway. And then with the additional 400,000 or so, we hope to do another 40%. So we'd be probably up more in that 60% range, hopefully.
So how much would it be, do you think, guessing sort of to do 100% and do them all at once?
The work we're doing for the 60 alleys, we're estimating it to be around 240,000. So I think that's roughly about 20%. So roughly, if I can do my math at the in my head, so a little over $1 million.
Okay. Great, thank you.
And again, we'll have better prices in a few weeks.
Okay,
better know what that total would be.
Hang on up here because you might get asked more. I'm not sure. Councilmember Barentine?
It is for you. You might as well stay. To the question that came up earlier, could you speak a little to exactly where the funding and what the plan is for doing S1, S2, and S3, and where you see that as in conjunction with the conversation that happened at the water and sewer board meeting regarding the additional study?
So our intent right now, based on the discussion with City Council, we are exploring both S1 and S2, which S1, we've taken that additional step to talk about the feasibility study of perhaps running down an alternate alignment along Radcliffe, west to the South Platte River. We're in the process. We actually met with Caliber again today to talk about that. So the intent would be is to, as Ms. Sabata mentioned earlier, we are going forward with the rate study. That's out for analysis as well. And the intent is to work with that consultant to say what is feasible in terms of how much we can bond for, and what's that tolerance level by the citizens. If we know we're increasing the sanitary sewer rates, how much can we possibly increase the storm sewer rates to cover whatever projects? So we can certainly consider S3 as well. That would be the next project on the list. The question becomes, is there enough, can we generate enough funds, and is there a tolerance within the community to pay for that?
So at this point, all there is in the budget is the additional consultant and studies, both for rate and for the area and the condition, but no actual capital project work.
Well, we have in the $3 million that was allocated, we are looking at the Jason Court repairs that at the end of Jason that goes into Rotolo Park. We are going to be cleaning out the pipe along Oxford. And then monies were earmarked in there too to begin the design work on whatever group of projects we move forward with.
And how much money has been allocated for the cleanup of Oxford?
We had $250,000 budgeted right now.
For just the
cleaning out
piece?
Correct.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Has Public Works thought any more about what the lower level employees, have you thought about addressing that employees that would do the maintenance work, since you are not just the management piece, but the people that we would actually hire to do the physical work?
Yes, so we talked about that, that we were going to move forward this year to hire 2 maintenance technicians to basically clean the storm sewer system. Not the Oxford pipe, we would contract that out just because it's so large. But the rest of it, we would actually use equipment from the utilities department and hire 2 people. We are in the process of hiring them, but we have not hired them yet.
So the 2 people we're hiring from the budget this year?
Correct.
And then we will have enough money in the budget to allow them to continue on after this year?
That's correct. So we've anticipated within the 2020 budget, I'll ask Ms. Sabata just to verify, that those positions are budgeted going forward.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just clarify, since it was brought up, that then the outside contract will be done on the rest of it, the bigger piece that we don't do necessarily internally?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, great. And that's in this new budget?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Any other further questions?
Can I, point of information?
Sure, go ahead.
On what you're suggesting is that the $45 million that council talked about in the study session is in the budget. Is that the piece that you were for S1 and S2? Is that what you were talking about, Mayor? Is that?
No, I was talking about, you were talking about the larger, I don't know what you call it.
Cleaning out of the Oxford
to
pipe,
kind of,
yeah.
the flushing of it. So that, no, the other 45 million, I'd love it if we could.
Well, I want to talk about that more, but it's not
No, I was
in the
talking about
budget.
the contract work because that's not done by these 2 people, right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
As my understanding, I'll let Ms. Sabata correct me, but we still have a placeholder, but not a specific dollar amount for the capital improvements for stormwater at this time. So whether it's 40 million.
So this would be additional information that would be brought forth to council next year, quite frankly, because we're beginning to research what we would be able to, or what we would need through the work that Calibre is doing. And then we are establishing what fee would be required to support the spending that would be discussed later in next year. As we've discussed, what's important is that we establish what revenue would be necessary to support a bond issuance, and that is what the RFP is actually asking a consultant to assist us with, so that we can see what other municipalities charge. And then we would establish, we would come forth to the council before the end of the year and discuss a rate increase that would then be the foundation by which we would be able to go into the bond market and discuss what funds we would move forward with. So we really can't include it in this particular budget because we have not taken the necessary steps to move forward in doing that.
Mayor Pro Tem, are you finished?
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Sierra.
My question is regarding the AV. I know that we pulled it out for the alleys, but because we do have a sizable general fund balance, does it make sense for us to do it this year, or should we actually delay it a year?
So if I can
go ahead, please.
Respond. So that would be a decision that City Council could ask us to include in the proposed budget that we bring forth. What would occur is that we would transfer a portion of the available balance to the capital fund balance. So we would take monies from the general fund. Or you could select to review the list of other projects as well, right?
But based on the fact that it was recommended on the earlier last week's study session, staff is recommending that we do it in 2020. That would be the recommendation.
So actually, we have removed the audiovisual.
As of tonight.
As of tonight.
But based off the discussion last week, it was part of it was a recommended expenditure for 2020 budget, but we asked to remove it in favor of the alleys.
Correct.
But based off of the fact that it was on the agenda last week, the recommendation at that time was to put it in for 2020.
Yes, I understand your question. Yes, it was.
Great. Further questions? Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
And this is more about the health benefits and what you negotiated. And I know I asked this question last week, but I just want to make sure that I worded it correctly. And what I want to know, has there been any decrease in the service coverage to the employee? In other words, has the employee gotten higher deductibles or decrease in things that the coverage will actually provide? And I don't know if I communicated that very well last time.
No, I certainly understood your question. So I wanted to make council aware we are still in the process of negotiation. So I wanted to make sure I acknowledge that. And I did not see Director Gonzalez here this evening. I'm not certain if she's joined us. I think what we will do, we will mark that question, and when we come back next week, we will ask Director Gonzalez to join us to answer that specific question.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Barentine.
I wanted to commend you on a couple of issues that make these questions. Hopefully, I'm pretty sure you can do pretty straightforward. I appreciate that it's a balanced budget and that in no way are we using any of the reserves in order to balance that. That becomes kind of an issue. And the work that you've done on this, we had just a variety of errors that led to some mistrust before that you have corrected. And I greatly appreciate your professionalism and your diligence in making sure that those weren't issues this time. How the money is spent is a different issue. Making sure that these documents can be trusted and added up properly, and that I greatly appreciate. I appreciate the work you did, and I know that you came in at the end of it last year. With that being said, I do have a question on how you did the enterprise funds, in that the sources of funds is just seeming to go off of the difference between your actuals, and I'm not quite sure whether that's as explanatory as I would like that to be. So if you just take a look at page 142 of your thing for the storm drainage fund, and just not having the operating revenue coming in. So are you just doing the charges for service as what I think in the book that I was comparing this to, they were a little bit different in how this was presented. So if you just want to explain to me how you laid this out a little, maybe I'll understand it better.
And just for, thank you. For clarification, we're looking at page 141 of the budget book. Is that correct?
Okay, 141 or 142, I think.
141 and 142.
Okay.
And your specific question is related to charges?
How you're doing the revenue pieces for that. I mean, there were a little bit more breakdown before because there are like personnel charges that were done in there before that broke it down a little bit more previously, both for the revenue and for the expenditures. I mean, we had like storage, the retention of records, and things that came up for specific questions before, and how you kind of put some of those together, or why you kind of collapse some of those.
Okay, so I think what you're referring to could be the operating costs specifically when you're talking.
And the operating revenue with some of them. Just
so for operating revenues, I'm going to refer to the revenue manual, actually, that was included as well in our communication. And I think there could be more detail in there. So if I could take a look at that, and I will provide you with an answer.
And also that the 7% from last year was going to be a decision that we made whether we were going to keep that 7%. And so we need to ask whether, since that 7% that we did last year was identified as just a one-year increase, whether that needs to be included again, because it looks like we're doing the 7 on top of that. So we're keeping the 7, and then we're doing another 7. When it was my understanding that we were doing the 7 for a year and then making a decision on whether we do the 7, that would just be a total of 7, not 14. So if we are actually doing an increase of 14 to be more transparent, I think we need to identify that we're doing an increase of 14, since that was dedicated for only 1 year, I believe, but you could check.
So if I can respond, you are correct. It is another 7% increase. It is the only fee increase that we are recommending as part of the proposed budget. So I'm not certain how to make that more clear. I don't know that 14% is exactly the correct number, because it would be cumulative, right? It would be 7% on top. So maybe it could be a little bit more explained that this is 7% in addition to the 7% that was included in the 2019. It's 7% on top of.
And it may just be a policy issue that this council has to address, is that we said it was only for 1 year, which would mean it would have to be reinstituted, which would mean we would have to approve a 14% increase this year. I mean, it's a matter of us deciding whether the previous 7% is just a given for the next year. That's not the way it was presented last year. So we'll have to have a flush it out a little bit more.
I do understand your question. So I think we could clarify the language. But if the budget, if you ask us to move forward with how it's presented, it is a 7% on the 2019, which would be a 7% in 2019 and a 7% in 2020.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
I have another question for you on the risk management fund. On the estimate for the end of 2019, it shows $500,000 under net uses of funds. So I guess my question is, we don't show anything under workers' compensation under the operating revenues, and so it is about that much short. The only reason I'm asking about this is last year when we were having the budget talks, Director Gonzalez suggested that we combine the Employees Benefit Fund with the Risk Management Fund in order to leverage the money in the Risk Management Fund. So is that $500,000 that's short? Did we already know that last year? And why is it short?
Can I ask you what page you're looking at? So
I'm
that-
sorry.
That's
I
okay.
apologize. It's page 172.
Thank you.
Point of information, that didn't get combined, right? We didn't combine.
No, we didn't
So I just want to make sure the
Right.
public knows that we did not combine those.
Right.
Maybe for
Yes.
Manager Lewis, too. So what page are you on again?
Page 172.
Okay, I think you are referring to the estimate for 2019, which is actually a use of funds.
Yes.
I want to clarify, so again, this fund would not be in a deficit at the end of this year. We would still have a remaining $788,000. The 513, I believe, and I can ask Director Gonzalez this specific question, is an actual use of the fund based on activity this year. So if you could help me understand.
Okay, so I guess what my question is, go up under the operating revenues, under workman's comp, we have money in every one of those columns except for the 2019 estimate. And it's been around $562,000, but there's nothing there.
I understand your question now. I will ask Director Gonzalez why that is the case and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council, are you ready to go to hear the public?
Yes.
Point? All right. Thank you. Director Sabata?
Just one more point I would like
sure.
to provide notification of the public hearing into evidence. If I could provide this to the city clerk, please.
That'd be great. Thank you. And council, I just want to remind you that this is not a quasi-judicial hearing. This is a public hearing to get feedback on the budget. We will be talking about it again next week, and there are changes that can be proposed. I think public hearing, we probably do another if we change anything by 5%. But so our first up to, actually we have no one favoring the budget tonight. So that one's done and over with. We have 6 people ready to speak tonight on the opposing, and first up is Mr. Stephen Ward. Please come up. Let us know that you live in the city, actually, and then be sworn in. Thank you.
All right, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Englewood City Council?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Stephen Ward, 4620 South Delaware Street. So I'm here tonight to kind of discuss a philosophical problem with the budget as I see it. It seems that the primary goal this year was to ensure that the proposed revenues matched the proposed expenditures exactly, and call that a balanced budget, and pride ourselves on setting a balanced budget. Last week, I witnessed council discuss some of the expenditures, and $200,000 was taken out for AV equipment and replaced with money for alleys. And no one seemed to realize that these concepts were not mutually exclusive. There is proposed in this budget $19.2 million in general fund balance in 2020. Of that general fund balance, $5.6 million of that is above the 16.7% policy limit that council has set. $3 million of the money, it's $8.6 million above policy, I misspoke. $3 million being loaned to the Stormwater Fund for a total of $5.6 million above policy. I believe that that $5.6 million was taken for public benefit and should be used for public benefit. That money loses value to inflation every year. The Colorado Price Index, according to the Finance Director's budget report, is scheduled to be 2.2%. That means that that same pool of money buys 2.2% less in 2021 than it could in 2020. So I propose one of 4 possibilities. The first is to adjust the limit of reserves, the cap, under the ratcheting and sliding method that we described in our Budget Advisory Committee report. This would allow the public to know that council has a plan for that money. The second option is to sweep the money into the Capital Projects Fund. $5.6 million, and schedule it for use on deferred capital expenditures. There are capital needs all around the city. Let's address them. Let's make a plan to address them and put it in the 2020 budget. The third would be to refund it. And I don't have time to go over the exact numbers, but given the population of Inglewood, if you refund $8.6 million, that's a $250 check for every man, woman, and child in the city. If you refund just the $5.6 million, it's about $150. And the last option is a plan that I'm not even sure is legal, but I'm going to suggest it anyway, and that is to take that money and rebate it to utility bills to offset the cost of stormwater improvements. And I would suggest that you investigate that possibility at least. But please tell us you have a plan for our money.
Thank you very much. Next up is Ms. Dickerson.
Did you set a time?
Yes, it's 3 minutes, sorry. Thank you for asking me that.
Well, I can't even get through this in 3 minutes.
I would like to suggest, though, that you need to get sworn in, but also that we have your email sent to us today be put into public record.
Okay. I'll try to only address issues I forgot to address in there.
Okay, great.
Okay. You could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Inglewood City Council?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
C.N. Dickerson, District 1. I have noted a number of questionable descriptions, budget items, and
Mayor, sorry, Ms. Dickerson, don't we have, for the public record, don't we have to have the address or no?
I think we do, but I think what we need to know is there a real resident of the city, not a homeowner or business owner, right?
Okay.
I think, is that correct? Yes.
Okay, apologies, Ms. Dickerson.
Okay.
I have noted a number of questionable descriptions and budget items and contradictions that give me pause as to the accuracy of the budget, and to identify them in a public hearing would take a lot of time, which I don't have. But this is not trivial because much of it is in contradistinction to code charter, prior budget information, and the city website concerning various departments. A partial list of problems on page 13 under fund balance reserves. The stormwater drainage fund may borrow $3 million to be repaid in 2020 from the bond issuance. That's kind of an assumption. What bond issuance? Can you issue a bond without adding to property taxes or getting voter approval? Crisis intervention co-responder services. What is this? Where is it budgeted and for how much? On page 13, there is a reference under police provides for additional mental health services to work with the crisis intervention team. What is this? It's not identified under the police organizational chart or budget. What does it cost and where did it come from? Neighborhood resources coordinator. Where is it budgeted? What department? What resources? Why is this needed or requested? We need fewer employees doing more effective and productive work, not adding positions. City center development, ground leases through EEF. The city has little to do or say about redevelopment. We are paying a huge amount already in consulting fees for what? This is an unnecessary expenditure. Homeless camp critical abatement. No, we need to prevent camping, not to continue to do this. Critical public works positions. What critical? Where budgeted? On page 13 under public works is asset management and project manager positions to be added. Why are these critical? We need worker bees, not more management positions. Do not do any of these requests. We need more information and better organization of departments and employees before adding anything that's costing us money. The names and descriptions are all messed up on almost every department, especially police. On page 76, it has fire marshal services still on it when it has been moved to the city manager. The chart on page 73 is not indicative or compatible with the descriptions. And everything in the budget are lumped into two accounts on page 78 and 79. The description on page 79 is Neighborhood and Environmental Services and identifies a non-existent neighborhood and environmental services under the police department. There's problems with P&Z and Board of Adjustments and Appeals, the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee. Who is this Director of Safety Services? I don't know that there is any such.
Sorry, your time is up. Thank you for coming tonight, but I will ask that...
Read the charter.
I'll ask that if the clerk could make sure that the email that she sent us earlier today is written in, or read into, or however you capture that.
Yep, we'll enter that into the
That's
record.
great, thank you. Thank you for coming. Next is Ms. Marcy Brown.
Ms. Brown, can I swear you in, please?
Oh, sorry.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Inglewood City Council?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
It's Marcy Brown, 2980 South Sherman Street. I am not the most knowledgeable person here tonight on the budget. Far from it, probably. But what I have a problem with is, once again...
We have the clock, please. Sorry. Keep going.
Once again, that you are looking to the taxpayers for more money with these sewer drainage fees. I would ask you to start thinking outside the box every time you need money to come to the taxpayers, because I'm actually tired of paying for the city that cannot balance a budget. I also agree that we do not need to hire more people in the city. I believe we need to hire or replace people who are inefficient and replace them with people who know how to work, that they are efficient in their jobs. You know, we have 5 people, which includes a supervisor and code enforcement. What do they do all day? I mean, I'd really like to know. I'm not trying to be smart or being adversarial. I'd really like to know what those people do all day. I don't see them going
I'd like to
down.
ask you to keep focused on the budget and the
Okay.
that was presented to us
Okay,
tonight.
well, for me, it's part of the budget because you are going to be hiring more people. So my problem is, why are we hiring more people when we have plenty of people to do the necessary work? So that's part of the budget. And I also think that it would be smart for the city to also ask their citizens, your natural resources, for out-of-the-box kind of thinking on how we can raise money in the city. We have a lot of intelligent people here. We have people who have owned businesses. We have people who have run businesses. We have people who are educated, who really think outside the box. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a town hall meeting and ask people, not to complain, but to just say, what are your ideas on how the city can raise money? And stop asking the taxpayers to pay the bills all the time. I mean, you're asking people who are on fixed incomes, single parents, whatever the case may be, disability. You keep asking them to keep coming up with money out of their wallet. Why are you doing that? I don't understand the city, I guess. Don't you care about your citizens? Don't you care about what they're going to have to give up for this budget? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Ms. Elaine Holtz.
All right. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Inglewood City Council?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Elaine Holt. I live at 3333 South Lincoln Street. I've been in this community now for 17 years. I chose Englewood. But I have this to say to all of you. contrary to somebody giving you praise. It's unfortunate I can't do the same. Ever studying, never learning. I had to write this down during study session because I got so upset there on the wasted time on nonsense on how to spend our money, which is really, when we have those serious problems that we have in this community, I think they should take top priority. I know some of you are not interested. I know that firsthand, having dealt with you. However, over $3,000 spent on another study about the problems that we have with our infrastructure in this community. All I can see is another needless, excessive expenditure for pretty reports, making the creators who claim to be experienced in the area, giving us a directive, a plan, a pretty picture. That's what we're paying for, making them wealthy and not providing what the community requires. That to me does not make sense. The money that we have, and I don't really trust this budget. I haven't had time to really go into it, but I can see already some flaws just by what I saw tonight on the screen. I am going to go into it further, though. What we need to do is correct the problems that we have. And you mean to tell me that we have nobody on staff who has the expertise to make a plan? We all know what our problems are. We have nobody on staff to take care of this and supervise the improvements? This is beyond reason. All I can say is, you definitely expressed the Peter Principle. Every one of you have achieved your level of incompetency.
Please refrain from insulting the council up here.
Pardon?
Please refrain from insulting the council up here. Do you have anything else to say about the budget, for or against?
I was insulted by this council before, wasn't I? I said nothing about it. I will do and say what I please to say as a citizen of this community. If you don't like it, Linda, you can move.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward tonight. Next is Ms. Maureen Wright. No, I'm sorry, Ms. Vicky Hoffman is next.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Inglewood City Council? Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Vicky Hoffman, 4630 South Bannock. I'd like to see the AV definitely be wiped out. I'd also like to see the fiber optic wiped out, as well as the $200K for IT. I think that those are excessive expenditures. And given that the priority really needs to be drainage and infrastructure, when you start adding up all these expenses, it's quite costly. And I didn't have a chance to add up some of these numbers. Our daughter had been in an accident, and I've been a little distracted. But I would say, based on a rough guess of just looking at the numbers, it would be easy to shave off at least $1 to $2 million. That could go towards fixing some pipes, cleaning some pipes. I think that this government is, it's too heavy on the top management, and that you need more lower level employees because, you know, I did a core request. It was number 25. 115 employees have left the city since October 1st. and I took off 25 for seasonal and retirees, and that is a huge problem. That tells me that the leadership in the top level might not be up to snuff, and we need to take care of the people that are actually boots on the ground. I think that raising sewer fees is excessive. It's time to raise the tap fees and the impact fees. And people cannot continue to afford all these rate increases, trash, you know, it's nonsense. I believe that the city is, you know, trying to monopolize some things, and I'm not in agreement. I believe in free monopoly, and I think it's time for city council to start treating the real dollar as a real dollar and not monopoly money. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is, and last is Ms. Maureen White.
Right. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Inglewood City Council?
I do. My name is Maureen White, District 1. The human resources additions and changes are concerning to me. Over the past year, we have already seen new positions created, more director managers added, movement of positions to other departments. Now even more additions are to come. It is time to have a study session with human resources to determine if there are other ways to make departments more productive and efficient. And it seems that we need more lower-level employees, such as in Public Works. I just heard that combining departments isn't possible. Let's make it possible. Evaluation should be done for all employees. Are there resources that we can access to help the employees expand their skills? We can support professional growth plans. Ann Schwader deserves to be recognized. She's an example of what can happen. Let's not duplicate existing services like Neighborhood Watch, which could be expanded to accomplish the goals of our new city manager's proposed neighborhood coordinator positions. And if necessary, we could offer a stipend to what have been volunteer block captains. This could improve alley concerns, eliminating the needs for an additional seasonal code officer. Finally, it's time to look at all the users of our infrastructure to repair and maintain it. And it's time for us to work together. The one thing that was really missing in this budget to me along the way, I didn't see prioritizing and postponing some things, like the signage idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the public coming forward tonight. Could I have a motion to close our public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and could I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Sierra. Please vote.
Mayor, I'm sorry, can you tell me who motioned?
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Council, do you want to take a quick break, or do you want to push through this?
Quick break.
Yep. Quick break? All right. Are we okay with that? 5, let's really try and get back. This is a time to take a break, not to necessarily just chat.
We might, did you look in the folder? Where's the folder?
The urinal, they put like an air freshener in. They're called urinal cakes.
Awesome.
You're like, you just.
I'm like, did you really say
Urinal cakes, yeah. You got any suggestions on what it should be?
That's none of my business.
Y'all figure it out. Yeah. Oh, man.
It's predictable. Thank you, Mayor, for letting us take a quick break. Don't worry, I watched it. Okay, let's get this party started.
Which one was better, mine or hers? Urinal cake or?
Right here.
If we could everyone take their seats, we'd like to resume.
Oh, no, 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 no. No, we learned early on that not all cakes are edible.
Yeah, I'd say funny.
All right, our next agenda item is number 11, the ordinances, resolutions, and motions. 11A, CB 40, Code Enforcement Advisory Committee enabling legislation. City Council should review a draft ordinance amending the establishment of the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee and should approve such ordinances as if it provides the requested updates and clarifications to the CEAC enabling legislation. And our city attorney, Allison McKitty Brown, is available for any further questions we might have. Any questions from council regarding what we were sent? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve Council Bill 40, Code Enforcement Advisory Committee enabling legislation.
Could I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll give it to Member Wink. All right, any further discussion? Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Yes, I would like to thank the city attorney for making the changes to the enabling legislation with, and incorporating a lot that the committee themselves had asked for, especially the part that Councilmember Sierra and myself asked for. And I just thank you very much.
Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you. It's along the lines of what Mayor Pro Tem Russell had just mentioned, but I would like to thank Ms. Bowden. I think you really put some nuance into those rules, and I think they're much better after the fact. And Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Sierra for pushing those forward. So I'll be supporting tonight, and I think that they came out really well as a finished product. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw you go. I thought Member Martinez. I also appreciate it, and thank you for the committee's input on it. I think the language is pretty clear on what this commission is for as an advisory committee, and it's got all the context that it needs in order to do a job well. So look forward to the future for that committee. So Councilmember Barentine.
I too would like to thank the current chair and the former chair, Jerry Walker. You guys worked on this for several years, and I appreciate that you clarified that and gave credit to the board for the time that it's worked on there. I appreciate that you made clarifications on there as well, and appreciate that the two council members who are the liaisons were able to go ahead and push that forward.
Councilmember Sierra.
I also want to thank the chair for just bringing it to our attention how it would impact the advisory committee as well as the city attorney for the added language, adding clarity. So appreciate you both.
Right. Thank you. I did want to point out, make sure that everyone knows that as this goes forward, there's only one council liaison written into this. And are you all okay with that? I just want to make sure. I mean, I think we never really talked about it in depth, but that is what it is.
Councilmember Sierra, correct? No?
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so I don't believe we've actually brought it to discussion just because we haven't really approved the changes. So once it does occur, then obviously we'll have to have a discussion about who would be the liaison. So.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Just want to make sure everybody knew that. All right, please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Next is 11B1. Staff recommends City Council approve by ordinance the modifications to Title 11, Chapter 3, Section 2 of the Inglewood Municipal Code in regard to removal of snow and ice. This is CB 20. And acting, no, it's no longer acting. Deputy City Manager Dorothy Hargrove is here to answer any questions. This is our second reading. Any questions for Manager Dorothy Hargrove? Seeing none, could I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve Council Bill 20, Code Enforcement Advisory Committee recommendation on code change for snow and ice removal.
I have a second?
I second.
Okay. Councilmember Sierra seconded. Any further discussion? I wanted to say one thing. I will again vote no on this, and I think we saw a discussion that appeared within some of the public social media that sort of confirms what I was hearing in my area. I know it's going to pass anyway, but anyway, I need to represent my area, and that I've heard more loudly no against this, but it'll be fine. Let's remove our snow. Councilmember Barentine.
I appreciate your position on that. I also heard some concerns early on in this that moving it from 12 hours to 24 would go ahead and create some issues where people wouldn't do it. And then we really found out that nobody was enforcing the 12-hour. And the biggest complaints ended up being calling code enforcement and being told it will melt. So I really do believe that this new change, greatly appreciate the committee's work on this and understanding that at least by 24 hours there's some teeth to it and some ability to go ahead and make sure that we get enforcement and when it's realistic. So I think people were much more comfortable when they came to understand that, and I think this is going to really help us get this a little bit safer for everybody in our community. Thank you very much for your work on it for the committee.
Member Cuesta.
Thank you. And I certainly appreciate the work by the committee as well, and I think that the enforcement component in making that quicker to enforce is going to be critical going forward. I, too, will be on the no side. 24 hours, it's with my proximity to the park, and from what I've heard also, it's a little too long. But again, very well work done, and I appreciate the enforcement component. Thank you.
Thank you. Please vote.
I had one more comment.
Member Barentine.
I do know that we're going to make sure the committee also made it very clear that they wanted to make sure that the city and for the city property adheres to this as well. So that was with that understanding.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes and 2 nays, the 2 nays being Councilmember Wink and Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Next is 11B2, Universal Business License Requirement. Staff recommends City Council approve by ordinance amending Title IV in order to require universal business licenses. Staff Finance Administrative Director Maria Sabata and Revenue and Tax Audit Supervisor Heather Driscoll is here. Any questions for these two? Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Yes, my question for you both is your understanding the same as Andrea Mannion's understanding of the bill?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, it is. It came to my attention that people were understanding that it was an income tax. And it's not that. It is just on anything like Andrea explained, when sales tax has not been collected. And so it's not automatically once they hit $30,000 unless, let's say hypothetically, somebody was to buy a $30,000 plotter and they didn't pay any sales tax on it when they purchased it. That would be an example of when that full amount would be due.
And so just one other question along those lines. If the magic number is $30,000, the minute they hit $30,000, are you going to require an audit of their use tax?
No, that's not our intention at all. As I've stated before, if anybody wants to get the de minimis license, they'll bring in their federal tax returns. We'll review those, qualify for that, and they'll fall under that. If they go over $30,000, it is their duty to inform us, and then they'll roll over into a regular sales and use tax license. And it's not going to be an automatic audit. We are only able to audit about 3% of businesses annually.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Barentine.
So considering page 2, section E of section 1, I specifically asked if you had a de minimis tax formula, and what you gave me was 3.5% of the total of the gross tax. And so that's where I had a problem with this, because that would be on service, on labor, on everything, not just the use tax, basically, for a lot of these home businesses. And that's what I had from Andrea Mannion, was that it was only going to be on the amount of what would actually be charged use tax, not on the gross. So if you could, since this paragraph says that you will be authorized to establish a de minimis sales tax and use tax license, and I asked whether you were going to have a formula with that. Is that the case? Because what my concern was, if I can just explain a little, is that somebody's got under $30,000, you're not going to audit them. And what I was understanding, that for purposes of convenience, you were just going to take their gross sales and charge them the 3.5%. That's the way that came out to the $1,050 previously. So the way Andrea has it is only the portion of that $30,000 that had not been paid tax on would be liable to that. But the only way that that's going to happen is if somebody has an accounting system which accounts for those items, and then they come up with that determination themselves, and they're just going to hand you money. So as an example, if I have $30,000 gross, and I hand you $15, and I say, this is my use tax that I owe, is that going to work? How are you going to do that?
Are you just trusting the person, or do we have a formula?
If they are saying it's under 30,000, we are going to trust them. If they cross over that, any purchases that did not have sales tax on them, so if they purchased anything from a retailer here in the Civic Center, it's likely that that retailer is licensed and collected the proper tax rate. And so those would not fall into that. So yes, the businesses will have to track which purchases have sales tax on them and which do not. But if they're under 30,000, they will qualify for that de minimis tax license if they so desire.
And by that, there is no formula, there is no percentage of their gross they have to pay, and you will allow them to just come and tell you how much they owe, and you will trust them and they will not be audited.
That is correct.
Is that going to be written into the establishing of the criteria for the de minimis sales and use tax that you're going to be doing?
Yes, and we actually hit on it on page 4, A6. It says that, sorry, I feel pretty short here. Where is it? That less than 30,000 of goods subject to use tax annually, such license allowing for reduced application procedures and exemption from sales and use tax audit requirements. So it is right there that if they're under that, they will be exempt from the sales and use tax audit requirements that we have.
That they'll be not subject to the audit, but whatever they hand you, you're going to go ahead and believe them and they won't get audited.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, write it in there, that'd be awesome.
Just for clarification, in the rules that we established to support the ordinance, correct?
Pardon?
You're suggesting that we write that specific language in the rules that the finance director establishes. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it says...
Because it says it here.
It says that you're going to authorize to establish it, but only to the audit part. What I asked previously, the first reading, was, is there a formula for the de minimis tax? And I was told, yes, it is the gross times 3.5%. That turns out not to be the case. It has now been corrected, and since there is some difference from the first reading to the second reading about what I was told for the same question, I'm just wondering if you're going to clarify that, because there seems to be some confusion.
So within the ordinance that we're bringing forth tonight has not been modified. I think we have had some clarification of how it's written, and I believe that the language that Ms. Driscoll has just reviewed supports that. I think there could be further clarification in the information that supports de minimis in a document that is produced within the finance organization, but it's to support the language here.
And I agree with what you're saying. If you clarify that within the information that they're given when they're given that license, that they're not going to be audited, and that basically you trust that what they bring forward is what you're going to accept under 30,000 gross, that this is what they owe as a portion of that for their use, then that part's fine. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
But it is totally different than it was before, so I'm glad you cleared it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, could I have a motion to approve CB 25?
I move to approve Council Bill 25.
Could I have a second?
A second.
Councilmember Sierra. Any further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Based on Andrea Mannion's testimony and your answers to my question, I will be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barentine?
I also am going to go ahead and change my vote from the first time. I could not ever accept doing a 3.5% on somebody's total gross. So I appreciate that you clarified that. That would mean we would be charging tax on labor for these, and I thought that it was for a convenience, that if they get a lower license, that they were just going to go ahead and agree to that. The clarification on that makes all the difference in the world, because it won't be anywhere near $1,050 on a business for, a service business for $30,000. So there was some outrage from the community on those kind of issues. So I appreciate that you clarified that, and I'd want to make sure that the council has at least provided some of that assurance on how you do those rules and
and explain it to people for these licenses that make it a little easier for them. But thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Driscoll, in particular, because you have been here, I'm not sure how many times. I'm sure you've kept 7, yes. And I actually believe that much of this, if not all, was very clear, but we all have different ways that we hear things. And so it's really helpful to have the clarity tonight. Make sure, go ahead if you'd like to.
I would like to say, for clarification's sake, in the first reading, my understanding was that what is the tax on $30,000? And so that's where the 1,050 came from. So I very likely probably misheard the question, so I apologize, Councilmember Barentine, and I'm very glad that we were able to clarify.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
7 down and 7 down. Go home and sleep well. All right, 11B3, CB 38. Staff recommends City Council approve by ordinance the Hive on Broadway planned unit development. Community Development Planning Manager Wade Burkholder and Planner 2 Eric Sampson are here to ask further questions along with the team they brought. So go ahead.
Good evening. I'm here to answer any clarifying questions you all might have.
All right. Members of council, any further questions about CB 38? Seeing none, could I have a motion to pass CB 38?
I move to approve Council Bill 38, Hive on Broadway Planned Unit Development.
Thank you, Member Wink. Could I have a second?
A second.
Councilmember Sierra? Yeah, please vote. I'm sorry, discussion. Oh, I see what you, yes, you're first. Go ahead, Amy.
I just want to remind council and the citizens that I would prefer to abstain from voting on this because one of the members or participants in the PUD is my client at my primary job.
Yes, and I will, I think that it makes sense and we'll let you recuse yourself. All right, discussion. Member Barentine.
I like this project, and I had no problem with supporting this. I think it was admirable that from the 2 community meetings, nothing that this council has done or that this city has done has held you back. This was the process. It was my understanding that you got held back because of whatever the Chose Fitness did, and you ended up with a second public community meeting. At both of those meetings, you did a beautiful job of going ahead and making sure that you limited the storage to the 60,000 square feet. That was important, but it was also important, and numerous comments were made, that you would not put residential on this, that you still have the ability to, with your original zoning, has nothing to do with the PUD, that you specifically put residential into that PUD. Is not my job to make sure that we kind of work around it and skirt around it so that we can try to prevent you through the site plan. But the overarching document is the PUD, and the PUD you specifically put in residential. And I do not believe that that is the commitment that you made to the community, and I don't understand why. So I really am not going to be able to support this. I think it'll be a good project. I just think that it would have been a totally different community concern if they knew that there was going to be this residential in there. And you got people to go away and accept this because you told them there wouldn't be residential, and that's not the case. So I'm not interested in trying to find clever ways to try to skirt it so that you could have to come back with a document that I believe we will already be committed to the units that would be being voted on tonight. I do understand the difference for the site plan, but the overarching requirements are in the PUD, and I would have preferred you kept your commitment to that and left it out.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
I too am concerned about the commitment to not take out the high-density piece of this. It is very obvious that there has been a lot of outreach from the citizens opposing high density, and with leaving that in, that's problematic. But I also think that that storage units in that property is not the highest and best use of that property, and so I also will not be supporting this tonight.
Councilmember Sierra?
I will be approving the PUD tonight, I've made a couple of statements on why most notably, this is going to activate the area around Broadway and Bellevue, as well as increase the storm drainage that we have. Currently, there's zero drainage there. We're going to be moving to a 25-year pipe. And I'm looking for the comments here, but obviously, if we do approve the PUD, if there were going to be any major changes like adding residential, it would have to come back to planning and zoning and go through this entire process again. So for that reason, I will be approving the PUD.
Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you. You know, and I've had a fair amount of time to reflect on this over the past couple weeks, and looking at actually the density of that site. So right now, right here, it's 11.51 acres, I believe. In my understanding is that they could go 900 residential units. That doesn't totally account for parking and some landscaping that might need to be worked in, but it'd be in that ballpark. Right here, right now, they can do that. If we were to allow this PUD to go through, it's been clearly stated by our attorney, the applicant's attorney, our community development folks, that they would need to go through another process if they wanted to put in residential. If we want to increase the likelihood of residential at this location, I think that we deny this PUD, because then it's going to sit there vacant. It's going to maybe bring in these, I think, C-level retail they were discussing, your Halloween shops, maybe your random bazaars, things of that nature. Or we can have the new businesses come in. Hopefully we get some good retail out of it. And at a minimum, we've put in that blockade to prevent those, call it 800-900 units that could go in there. It would have to come before council. I think if this group is going to invest many millions, they're not going to make that change overnight or request such a thing overnight. So to me, the pragmatic approach, the right thing for the neighborhood is to pass this. Let's get some good retail in there, hopefully. Let's get it acceptable. It's going to look good. We'll get all the, God only knows what's in there. We'll get everything out of there. We'll get it cleaned up. And I think it really puts a barrier in between those 900 units, which right now are by right. That could be done. So this notion that I'm going to not pass it and put it back to by right, it somehow puts this, it makes it more difficult to do residential there. I just don't understand it. So I think it's the right thing to do for the neighborhood, and I think it's the pragmatic thing to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cuesta. I particularly have been listening to you and your residents in that area, although that place is going to serve the entire city in its, both in its increasing of value and decreasing, whichever way it goes. So I really appreciate your comments here, and I'll be voting yes again. I particularly want to challenge the team to make us very proud. Okay? We're going to be watching and we're going to be excited with you, so I hope that we'll all be cheering as we go along. Any other comments? Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 4 ayes and 2 nays and 1 abstention. The 2 nays being Mayor Pro Tem Russell and Councilmember Barentine, and the abstention being Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. Passes, and thank you for sitting through a public hearing tonight. Next up is 11C1, the resolution. It's resolutions and motions. This is approval of change order with Presidio Networked Solutions Group for Police Headquarters. Staff recommends City Council approve this change order number 4 in the amount of $1,037, which everyone's going to have to understand why we have to bring this forward, because it seems so odd, to repair a video camera in the police headquarters building. Here to speak to us is Public Works Director Maria Andrade.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So with the new procurement policy, I did consult the finance director about this one. It does seem, it is a very small dollar amount, but because we had already exceeded the 10%, any changes over that do need to come before you. So I think this is a great real-world example of how, if we do tweak the procurement policy in the future, maybe we can put something in to cover situations like this. But in reading the policy collectively, we feel that we do need to bring this forward. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
If Adolphson and Peterson has agreed to pay the cost, did this really need to come to council? Because it's not being charged to the city.
Technically, we're changing the contract. That's the difference. So because the city has the contract with Presidio, so we are increasing the change or the dollar amount in the contract. Therefore, then we're going to get a credit from A&P. The only other way we could have done it was for them to enter into a contract with Presidio directly between A&P, and they chose or would have preferred not to do that.
Thank you.
I could have a motion to approve 11C1.
I move to approve agenda item 11C1, approval of change order with Presidio Network Solutions Group for Police Headquarters Building.
Thank you, Member Wink. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Martinez. Any further discussion? If not, please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. 11C2, staff recommends City Council approve a professional services agreement with Hazen and Sawyer Consultant or Hazen in the amount of $391,684 for the Water, Sewer, and Stormwater Master Plan Project. South Platte Water Renewal Partners Director Peter Van Rye and Public Works Director Maria de Andrade are here to explain this to us.
Good evening, Council. So this one's a little unique for me. I'm actually, as Director of South Platte Water Renewal Partners, you all understand that I work for the entity that's co-owned by Littleton and Englewood. In this instance, I'm lending my services to help guide a set of planning studies that really will help us understand a baseline, give us a baseline understanding of the water system, the sewer system, and the remaining elements of the stormwater system that are not being looked at, or have not been looked at already. And so really my role is as a principal guidance person. It's actually going to be managed out of utilities. We have a project manager out of the utilities department who's going to manage the day-to-day of this, and I will just help guide it. And the reason why I'm in helping is I've done this at other utilities. I've had experience with these kinds of studies for water and sewer systems and stormwater systems. And so it's really to lend expertise to help make sure that the direction we're going is the right direction overall for the city. And so what we're asking for today is a contract with Hazen and Sawyer to complete what are essentially baseline documents that help us understand where the systems are today. And so there's been a lot of talk over the last several months about the state of our infrastructure and deferred maintenance and things like that. And so in order to understand what we're facing and ultimately what we need to fund from a project perspective, we have to get a baseline understanding of the condition of the systems as they are today. And so that's like the water pipes themselves, the water plant, it's the Allen plant, the sewer system. Fortunately, the sewer system does not have any lift stations, so that eliminates a complication, which is great because it's a gravity-only system. And then the other elements of the stormwater system. So there's been been the Caliber study, which has looked at the major flooding issues, especially with the Oxford line and the other areas that had the major flooding. But you still have the remaining pipes and the remaining stormwater system throughout the rest of the city that is in a similar age in many respects, and it's understanding what the state of those systems are. So planning, the way this kind of planning works is it's an iterative process. So you start trying to handle and address as much as you can initially to get a baseline assessment and understanding of where the systems are. And then from there comes additional analysis to understand areas that need further evaluation for continued projects. So with this planning and condition assessment effort does initially is establishes that baseline. So if you were to think of this in terms of a percentage, we're trying to hit 80 to 85% of what the issues are. And that is not a scientific number, that's just more of a general, so you understand that we're not going to hit 100% with this. You never do with these kinds of studies because you always find out more information over time. But with that 80 or 85%, what you can do is then you can put together a document that creates a prioritized capital plan for all three of those utilities over the course of, that are 10-year capital plans. And much like what you all saw presented for South Platte Water Renewal Partners, where we did the capital plan and then subsequently did a financial plan. Those capital plans that will come out of this will inform the financial plans for rate and fee studies that will be done in 2020 for the three utilities. And so essentially how this works is Hazen and Sawyer will work with city staff. There'll be a lot of data gathering, basically collating and bringing together all the information that we have today, organizing that information, and then seeing where those data gaps are. And a lot of that is interview with staff, meetings, workshops with staff to understand not just what do we have in files, but what are people's experiences with working with the systems? Where are the known problem areas so that we can further evaluate and assess those and then prioritize what are the needs. And so there'll also be an evaluation of the Allen plant to understand what the needs are associated with that plant, and that can subsequently go into a prioritized capital plan as well. And then once all those gap analyses and assessments are done, we'll then combine that into this this document that will really inform the next several years of how we prioritize projects. You can't address all these projects in 1 year, but we need to know what are the things to prioritize so that we address them first and then move on to the next ones and move on to the next ones. Really good systems are when they have these the proactive systems that have these planning processes will essentially do a baseline plan like this, and then they'll reevaluate it every year. So they'll look internally at it to make sure that it's still on track. And then about every 5 years, they do another comprehensive look to make sure that whatever's been done in the last 5 years is now incorporated in, and then whatever has been newly learned over that 5 years is now projected into the new 10-year capital plan. So it's an ever-evolving process because the systems are ever aging and getting older. And so this is our first baseline step for the water system and the sewer system, and then, like I said, for those remaining elements of the storm system. So we sent out an RFP for this level of planning services. We had a number of consultants come to our pre-proposal meeting. In the end, we actually only ended up with one responding consultant. That one responding consultant actually combined with another one of the consultants that was in the room, so it's a partnership. The other consultant is actually more of a modeling-based consulting firm, and so what they do is they develop water and sewer models. And so with those water and sewer models, we can understand how should the system be working from a pressure perspective and a flow perspective, and then we can then go calibrate that with real-world tests of fire hydrant flows and things like that. And so when you combine those two companies together, they sent in the proposal that you see today that's before you. We evaluated it. They have the expertise. They're a company that does this kind of work. Their costs for each one of the systems independently were in line with what we were generally expecting. And so the total cost for the project is $391,684, and that breaks down to between the three systems, it's $187,000 for the water system, $127,000 for the sewer system, and about $76,000 for the and I'm rounding a little bit, for the stormwater system. And so what we'll do is we'll gain the economy of scale of using one consultant to develop all three plans, but we'll make sure that each fund is accurately funding the project as associated based on the work. And so within the contract approval that we're asking is for that $391,684, and then a 10% staff managed contingency, because with planning projects like this, you always have things that you don't necessarily aren't expecting. And so that would be something that would be managed by myself and the project manager, and which ultimately results in a total authorization between the three funds of $430,852. But the contract amount that we're requesting approval tonight is $391,684. None of that other funding would be, or monies would be approved unless there was a change order that we approved for additional work. And so with that, I'd like to open it up for questions and any other explanation I can provide.
Thank you, that's helpful. I also wanted to say that the Water and Sewer Board did approve this as well.
Yes.
So it went through that committee, just in case people didn't realize that. Okay, questions? Member Martinez?
Thank you. Maybe it's in here and maybe I missed it, but how long do we anticipate the duration of this kind of study to take place?
Great, I left that out. I should have said that, the schedule. So really the way this is working, so if it gets approved tonight, we'll start immediately. The goal is that 6 months from now, so March of next year, we have information that can be that capital plan. And so that capital plan is the most important thing that will feed into the rate and fee study. And so the goal is within that next 6 months that we have enough information so that when we move forward with the rates and fee study for the water, sewer, and the water system and the sewer system, we have the background information to be able to create a defendable recommendation for what the revenue requirements are for the system. So 6 months to get to that major milestone, and then it'll be another month to a month and a half to just clean up and finish the final reports.
Okay, and then a secondary question to that is, I assume, but I just want to make sure I understand that this group that you're working with will kind of do the study, and then you will work very closely with this group in terms of the capital plan priorities, or will that come mostly from them?
Absolutely. It is a joint, it's a joint working relationship. So they are going to do the assessment, and then we'll take that information and as staff will evaluate what their recommendations are to make sure that they conform with what we think makes sense for the city and in terms of prioritization. So it is not we just hand it off to the consultant and they come back and give us their recommendation and then we just forward that. It's an iterative back and forth process where we help guide what that final capital plan looks like and then move forward with the recommendation as we move into rates and fees.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you. Did this come before us in a study session?
This did not come before you in a study session. The way it came, we've talked about it as I've talked through the process of getting to defendable rates and fees for the enterprise systems. We talked about the first step being this condition assessment planning process, which then tells you what the scope of need is. And that becomes the defendable information that goes into the recommendation for what's the increase in tap fees, what's the increase in rates, and how, and not only that, but putting it into a 10-year time frame gives you that ability to smooth that such that it's not one big hit all at once. And that's really what this process is trying to do, is it's trying to not attack everything all at once, but make sure that every year we're slowly addressing the issues that need to be addressed in perpetuity, basically, because these systems will be there. They don't go away, and you don't get to an end with systems like this. You're constantly needing to reinvest in them over time because pipes and pumps and things like that deteriorate and they have a useful life.
Sure. So in addition to that, will any of this information, if it were to pass, be beneficial also to South Platte Water Renewal Partners? And if so, does Littleton share in any of the expense of this?
No. So this is outside of so South Platte Water Renewal Partners is essentially inside the fence at the water plant. And so we've done this kind of plan and this 10-year capital plan. We adopted it, we finalized it in April of this year, and that's what informed our cost of service analysis, which we talked about in the July meeting. And so that cost of service analysis is our component of the sewer fund, the sewer enterprise fund for treatment in Englewood and Littleton. This work is all Englewood-based systems. So it is independent of South Platte Water Renewal.
And final question then, if it is entirely related to Inglewood systems, how will this align with the Calibre study and any of the bond matters that we're looking into in infrastructure repair? Does this run are these on separate tracks? Will there be a point that they intersect?
They run in parallel tracks, and there is a point where they intersect. So part of what this document, what we want to do with this last piece from the stormwater perspective, is we want to take the information from the Calibre study, we want to take the information from urban drainage studies, and then the remaining parts of the system that haven't really been looked at, and have them all co-located in one specific plan. So it's somewhat, it's analyzing those other elements, but it's also merging all that other information, so we're not looking all over the place for one plan over here and one plan over here, that there's one common place that the information is being generated from.
I know I'm running on with these questions. May I have one more follow-up there? Thank you. So along that same line, what's the timeline for completion on this study?
So the timeline for completion on this study is we're looking in the March timeframe. So the major elements that you heard about earlier relative to the stormwater bonding, this will inform that process in parallel to some degree, but the major elements of that bonding are really the work that was done by Caliber, which is the major flooding issues with S1, S2, S3. And so this work is supplemental work that comes in that's looking at the rest of the systems. It's not necessarily tied directly to that first initial bond issuance, if that bond issuance goes through.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Sierra.
My questions are centered more around, well, we're familiar with the Calibre study. So the deliverables that we get back, are they going to be in a similar format where we did start realizing, you know, the higher priority ones are going to be S1, S2, S3? I'm just trying to understand what is it that we're going to see when it comes back? And then secondly, just because we didn't get the RFP, and maybe I'm a little bit, or, you know, we received RFPs in the past for some of the other projects we were doing. I'm the executive recruiter, we got the RFP of that ahead of time for that. So we were able to see what it was. So when we start seeing this, I had to basically go through their executive summary in order to understand what it is that we're looking for. So just understanding what the deliverables are, if we're going to, what type of format we're going to get it in, because there was a lot of, we received a lot of feedback about the way that it was in an HTML format and not necessarily a PDF. So that type of thing is, just understanding that aspect of it is basically what I'm asking at this moment.
So I'm going to defer to Director Andrade because I'm not familiar with the Caliber study, but I know she is.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Sierra. This will be a paper document that will be in a PDF format. So I believe what you're referring to is the website, basically. So we are creating this in a paper document that will be available on the city's website as a PDF. How that comes together with the Caliber study and the results that we'll see will be very distinct recommendations based on their analysis. So they're looking at, let's say, somewhere outside of the flood-prone areas that Caliber looked at. Let's let's say somewhere up in the northeast portion of town. So taking those existing studies where we know that we've already evaluated, but then perhaps there's a pipe that runs down Downing. It's probably already sized adequately, but what's the condition of it? That's kind of what we're getting at here, is that last missing piece about the maintenance of the existing system. Similar to the adjacent court, what else is out there that's perhaps failing that we need to start putting into a prioritized budget to start not more than just cleaning them out, but actually perhaps fixing the failed inverts, that sort of thing. So I would envision that the deliverable is in the report with prioritizations based on the level of damages that they've seen in the system. And they'll be making some extrapolations from that too, because they won't be able to look at every single pipe, but they will be looking at certain ones and then expanding from there.
Right, and are they also going to be able to see, such as the delay that we had with Oxford and Santa Fe, where, what was it, the water main that was really close to the wastewater pipe? The Senate, yeah, exactly. So are they able to identify that as well, saying that if you're going to do this, then you have to take into account this sanitary pipe, or?
It won't be that detailed.
It won't be that detailed, okay.
Yeah, so they'll simply identify, let's say there's a storm sewer pipe on Clarkson that the inverts failed. We need to identify that as a priority, and then we go into further design and engineering to make sure, you know, what can we do to stabilize that pipe, or do we have to replace it, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, remind everybody, we're still in the questions. Councilmember Barentine is next.
I'll do this for Director DeAndrea first. There was in the storm drainage fund, monies for record keeping, and actually quite significant, and some employees that have been paid over the last couple of years for that purpose, as well as the maintenance. But when we did the public meeting, there were several comments made that we didn't keep any records on what the maintenance was for those. Since this kind of goes to the work that he's doing, this $391, whatever, $1,000, they have to rely on the records that we have available. I mean, he took some time after the meeting the other day to go over a little bit some of the questions that I had. And if we have had a problem with record keeping and what we've been maintaining, how is this going to be as effective and the big bang for our buck with that?
Yeah, that's why I think there will be some extrapolation. They also, I believe there's an element where they'll actually be able to go down into some of the pipes, not everyone, but that's why the interviews are critical with existing staff to really talk about, even though they might not have kept paper records, they know our utilities staff knows the condition of certain places, where there are problems, and can start to identify that through that verbal record. So it's going to be a variety of methods.
Okay. And hopefully we have enough people left in that department that have that institutional knowledge, or maybe we did keep the records and we've got them a little bit. It sounds like that you're actually going to be waiting for this to complete in order to do your piece of it. And people are waiting for something to be done to mitigate some of the storm area.
Absolutely, and I don't think we are waiting for this. I think this is the maintenance element that's above and beyond the flood-prone areas. So we're still moving ahead. Our intent is to come back in late October. I think we've penciled in October 28th to come back and present the findings of caliber to move forward with the stormwater capital projects that we've already talked about. So we're still moving on a dual track of still moving forward with the flood-prone areas, the areas that Caliber has studied, while also doing this on those systems, the existing storm sewer systems outside of the flood-prone areas.
Okay. And then for there was a request for information based off of a failure of one of the sewer pipes that actually had some leakage into the Big Dry Creek pretty close to Bellevue Park. And a core request came in asking if the city had a emergency preparedness plan for the failure of a sewer pipe. And the answer was no plan exists. And I want to know, one, whether that's accurate, and if it is accurate, is this 300 plus K that we're spending here going to address that and and fix that issue for the sewer?
I think that's probably something Director DeAndre.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, so I responded to that core request in consultation with staff. We do not have a response plan written. I think, again, similar to a water main break, we would respond with our staff to assess the situation and repair it as we did, but we have no written plan in terms of, you do step one, step two. This will not address that specifically as having, an emergency preparedness plan. I think this is a subsequent element that we have to work on in-house to develop, more of a written plan of how we respond to those types of emergencies.
Is there any part of any of the stuff that we're doing that would accomplish that with our connector districts, to give them some kind of idea that we've got some idea that if we had a failure, that we know what we're going to do?
At this point, no. We have to renegotiate all of the connector district agreements as well, is my understanding. I think that's a big task. And then, like I said, creating emergency preparedness plans for those types of emergencies would be a priority for staff to do.
Then, Peter, I need to ask the emergency plan that you had stated before when we spoke, I believe in April or whenever that was. You said that the plant had one. Is that only within the confines of the plant and does not address any of the other pipes if they were to fail for the plant, or?
That's correct. So our emergency response plan, because South Platte Water Renewal Partners is within the confines of the fence, and then if you recall, we brought the delineation points on the 4 main interceptors that come in, and those those delineation points are just outside of the fence to the first manhole that makes sense. And so our plans are looking at all of that. Now, that doesn't mean we just, myopically look at that point. If we see something that's slightly upstream of that, we'll immediately notify Englewood or Littleton that there's an issue, because it ultimately does affect us. So if we have a collapse in one of those sewers, it affects us because there's all kinds of debris coming in, and that could potentially impact the treatment plant. And so the plans for within the cities are independent of what we have for the plant itself.
And the plant doesn't make any requirement for any maintenance on the lines coming into it?
No, because
That's separate?
it's not within our purview. And I just want to add one clarification. We're going to evaluate the connector agreements, and I don't know that, I'm not sure that we're going to negotiate all of them yet. Just to be clear, we're going to look at them to make sure that they meet the needs of the connector district and the city as it relates to the treatment plant, based on all of this information that's coming out. So I don't know that we're necessarily going to renegotiate them all, but we're going to assess them all.
But you don't believe that this piece of it is going to provide any additional protection for the citizens, for our safety, for our health, if there's any line? That's not really what this is for.
I wouldn't say that it wouldn't provide any protection, because it will give us information of condition. And so that's good information to know. It doesn't necessarily create an emergency response plan, but it can inform an emergency response plan when one is created. And so that's outside of the scope of this. But if we know that there's an element of an interceptor that's being assessed through here that's a problem, or that's got deterioration, or the crown is deteriorating because of H2SO4 or something like that, then we can actually prioritize that and make sure that people are of heightened awareness that is a potential issue. I wouldn't say it necessarily
And just one more clarification.
You know what? Councilmember Martinez has been waiting. Can you hold off on another one?
It's just the final question. I mean, is this include all of the lines within the city of Englewood for the sewer?
For the sewer, that's the intention, is it's looking at, now it's not going to look at every foot of every line. It's going to take indicators for areas. So you can't look at every single line.
No. But regardless of who owns it, it's within the city.
The plan is to look at the city system.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. This is to kind of piggyback off Councilmember Questa's earlier question, and forgive me if it is duplicative and if it's the same question, but I want to understand how it overlaps or intersects with our asset management program that we were talking about, and the rate fee studies that we've been talking about. How do they play together?
So I'll cover the rate and fee study as it relates to water and sewer. So what this does is, and when you couple it with the work that was done out of South Platte Water Renewal Partners, is it tells it is given to the rate and fee consultant to then put into a 10-year financial plan. Within that financial plan, there's revenue requirements to meet the capital plan as outlined, if we, in order to keep the systems maintained and in functional working order. Now, what we may do, and this is how rate and fee studies work, is we may give them the capital plan, and they come back, and they say, there's no way you can do this because it's way too expensive. You need to lengthen out your timing of your capital plan, at which point, then we go back and look at the capital plan and say, all right, so we need to push this one out farther, this one out farther, this one out farther, so that it becomes more of you're looking at what's the tolerance and affordability versus meeting the needs of the systems, so that we don't get so far behind that we have a catastrophic failure. And so it's really once this first plan comes out, this first 10-year plan comes out, we then work with the rate and fee study consultant to understand, okay, so is this really tolerable, or is this something we can do, or do we need to lengthen it farther, do we need to reprioritize, things like that. Does that help?
It does help.
Okay, and so as it relates to asset management, this incorporates into that, but I'm going to defer to.
And just a little bit of a clarification for storm sewer. So Ms. Sabata mentioned earlier that we are moving forward with a rate analysis study for storm sewer. That RFP actually went out on Friday. So we're a little bit ahead of the game with storm sewer just because we know we have a need. And so we're going to have to plug in, if you will, some dollar amount for maintenance because we won't have the results of this study until March, and we're hoping to get the rate study completed around January so we can move forward with a bond initiative. So, but we'll put a dollar number in at least for maintenance, knowing that we have to do something, and then we'll have to adjust it once we get the results of this back. In terms of asset management, the asset manager is really about looking at long-term systems. So they need studies like this to be able to project and start to lay out over the years, what do we need to do? And that's the piece that we're really missing right now is we look 1 year ahead, but we need to look multiple years ahead and not have these very large spikes and really balance it out between sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water, and our general fund needs. And how do we keep from having those very highs and lows but yet take care of the entire system? So that's really the goal of the asset management person, and we would get a software system to support that.
So, and the new hire is going to absolutely use this information as like a starting point?
Yes.
At a minimum? Okay, great. Thank you. That was very helpful.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Have we talked with any of our neighboring municipalities that have done studies like this? Have any of our neighboring municipalities done studies like this? We all have aging infrastructures, I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, so I know, I have talked to Littleton's Public Works Director about this. I don't know exactly what point they're at in their assessment, but I know they're doing the same kind of thing for their sanitary system. They don't have the water system because they're a Denver Water customer. I know when I was in my previous employer to South Platte Water Renewal Partners, I was at Parker. We did this, exactly this type of process for 3 areas. One, it was actually the water system itself, the sewer system, and then we had, in that instance, we had a long-term water plan, which was looking at water needs outside of just the distribution system within the state, or I mean within the district itself. And that was another one of those instances where there hadn't been planning for a long time, and it was really establishing that baseline. I know since I've left, they've gone through a reassessment of that information that was done 5 years ago. So this is a process that I know that the utilities throughout the Front Range they do regularly, because that's how you go from a year-to-year outlook on things to a 10-year and a 20-year outlook, so that you can plan and you can anticipate what the needs are down the road. Does that help?
That does help, but one of my concerns is that we didn't have any competing bids, and then 2 companies decide they're going together to do this job for us. I'm not sure we're getting the best bang for our buck and for the citizens. And I mean, can you guarantee that we're going to do that? And here's what I'm hearing about this whole study, and correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing about this whole study is how we're going to justify going out to the ratepayers again and raising the rates to pay for all of this, instead of thinking outside of the box. And if I'm wrong, I'd like for you to correct me.
Okay, so well, first of all, I can't guarantee anything. I can't stand here and guarantee that the consultant bid is, I wouldn't guarantee that. What I can tell you is, based on my experience, it's in line with what I would expect for this kind of effort. As it relates to why we only got, why 2 companies joined, they have two different focuses. One's more of the actual planning company, the other one's a modeling company. They are a modeling specific, so they do water and sewer models, and that's a discrete element of what this project is looking to do. So the fact that they partnered is not, it's not surprising to me at all. Consulting firms do it all the time, where they'll partner with other firms because they think they'll have a better option at getting the project. Why we only got 1 bid? I have some thoughts on that. I think we had 10 consultants in the room. My thought is that you had 2 different kinds of consultants. You had the the larger consulting firms, several of which we do work with now, Stantec Consultants, Carollo, Jacobs, those are all consultants that are the larger firms that we, at South Platte, we actually have contracts with all of them. So we don't use just one consultant, we bid out all of our projects, and we have a number of consultants that are working on it. You have this other group of consultants that are more of a, they're a smaller firm, they don't have a national and international presence, and they're a smaller type of firm, but they haven't done as much work necessarily with the city or South Platte, for example. You know, they didn't know me, or I mean, they knew who I was, but we haven't worked with them. And so my thought is, and I could be completely wrong, this is just my assessment of it, is the large firm said, we can't compete because all these smaller firms are there. And the small firm said, we can't compete because we aren't positioned for it because all these other firms are positioned for it. Fortunately, we actually had two companies get together and provide us a bid. And like I said, I'm not going to guarantee it, but it's in line with what I've seen. It's in line with what I would expect from this level of work. There's a second part of your question. Second part, the rate and the increase in rates and fees. So this is not the point of this is not to come in and say we're gonna raise rates. At the same time, we've all talked about for the last year the fact that there is a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance in these systems. In order for us to be able to come forward and say this is what we need, we have to understand what that deferred maintenance has done to these systems and what the condition of those systems are. So I'm not going to tell you that the rates are going to go up or down or whatever they're going to do. We're going to find that out after we have this baseline information. Given the fact that there's been deferred maintenance for this long, the idea that there's not an investment necessary, I would be surprised if in the end result we don't have some kind of investment that's necessary. Then the question becomes, to what degree do we want to make that investment? And that becomes a policy discussion. And so is it a matter of addressing pipes because there's brown water or there's red water, or the water plant because it needs new infrastructure? And these are all things that I don't have specifics on, but that's where we present the information that allows the policymakers to say, yeah, you know what, that's an investment we should make, or we can wait on that and thereby reduce rates. Does that help?
Kind of. Thank you.
Yep.
Right. I have one quick question, and then I'm going to ask for us to have a motion. This is really silly. I'm trying to figure out why in parentheses it says consultant or Hazen. Is that a typo, or is there something about their name that I can't find in the contract?
Yeah, their name is Hazen and Sawyer, and so we truncated it to Hazen.
But it says consultant or Hazen.
Yeah, because in the remainder of the document, their legal name is Hazen and Sawyer, and so we either referred to them as consultant or Hazen. That's why it's
okay. All right.
That's why it's said that way.
Not a third company in here that's
No.
unnamed.
Nope.
All right. Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve 11C2?
I move to approve 11C2.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. That was Martinez and Wink. Discussion. Councilmember Martinez.
I just want to say thank you to the both of you very much for bringing this forward. This is critical information that we desperately need, and I feel like this, instead of operating all the time on what emergency is in front of us, this is going to set us up for a better plan in the future so we can plan and take care of our maintenance and fund it appropriately. The only way we can do that is with the baseline information that we don't have. So we absolutely need this. And so I'm very happy that it's come forward, and I will be supporting this. And to Mayor Pro Tem's comment about the fee increases, I feel like part of why we're in a bind a little bit with deferred maintenance is over this last 20 plus years, we haven't raised the rates a little bit here and a little bit there. So now we're already behind and we're trying to catch up. So this is the absolute, it makes sense to start here. It's the only place we can start. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Member Martinez. And that was under 40 seconds. So I'm going to ask everybody to try and keep it under a minute if you can. And we're going to run through these. I think Mayor Pro Tem was next.
I just have a comment to make. We are spending $391,000 and you want us to make a decision in 30 seconds. I have grave concerns about this because we have a staff that has no historical background. I mean, one of the examples that was used was the Northeast Pipe. In 2015, that whole study was done up there. There were decisions made that they would put in a 100-year pipe up in that section, but we have to wait on Denver. The study is only going to be as good as the information that we get to them. And if we can't get the information to them, this study isn't going to be any good. So I have some grave concerns about this, and I have some grave concerns about decisions that we already made on S1 and S2, and it all should have been combined together, but now we've piecemealed it, and we're going to have double fee increases for everybody because we're not looking at everything as a whole picture. And staff is already moving forward with guidance that they got at a study session. I'm very concerned that we are in trouble. Thank you.
Councilmember Barentine.
I share Councilmember Russell, the Mayor Pro Tem's concern. I don't want it delayed anymore. I appreciate that we were able to use some of your expertise in being able to try to get this piece of it together to get the remainder of the stormwater piece done and then do the rest of it. I don't know where we can go with this piece to address what the Mayor Pro Tem has done. There was maintenance. There was money, there was personnel, there were records, there was funds for this, and then all of a sudden new people come and say it wasn't done. I don't know where we lie with that. I don't know how we go back and undo that. I don't know whether that's an accurate assessment at this part. That's something for the new city manager to go ahead and address and see where we are and whether that money was accurately spent. I think that I appreciate that we were able to use your expertise to try and do some of this piece and put this stuff together. I appreciate that Littleton agreed to let us use you for your other time of that, and that you took the extra time to answer some of my questions the other day. But I share her frustration with it. But we're in a position where we can't really not move forward. I appreciate that you also let me know that this will not delay the pieces for the S1, S2, and possibly S3 that we're doing. I will end up supporting it, but we really need to hold each other very accountable for how we move forward with this because the citizens have had enough. Thank you.
Councilmember Sierra.
I'm excited about this this project. Just understanding the needs of our infrastructure overall is something that's definitely needed. So don't want to take much time just because Councilmember Martinez hit a lot of the points that I wanted to say. So looking forward to seeing the results of this.
Thank you. Councilmember Cuesta.
$390,000 is a lot, and that's just the spendthrift in me. And no matter what the city buys at that level of money, it's going to catch my attention. Councilmember Martinez mentioned that one of the things that she sees that's led to this point is that we've been slow in raising the rates. To me, I think another component is that I don't think we've kept up with that just routine maintenance that we should be doing, and this plan should help out with that. And I think that that's been a component that we just really haven't been on top of. In my head, I'm telling myself this is not a study. This is a plan, because I think people have had enough with studies as well. And that's what I feel is the deliverable. That's the end result here, is we'll know what we need to do. You're saying it'll map out for 10 years, possibly beyond. And I think that that's what we need to know, is what do we need to do on a yearly, biannual basis, whatever the case may be. What's it going to cost? What kind of staff do we need? So that hopefully there's a council a decade from now that's a little better set up, 5 years from now, where they're not really constantly having to respond to whatever the latest crisis is, which hasn't been a constant here, but I feel like it's been enough, and I would imagine there's some sentiment of agreement there. So I'll be supporting 390, but I'll be supporting. Thank you.
And I appreciate your clarification. It is a master plan, so it is that guidance document.
I also wanted to point out Schedule A, I think is pretty clear what it's going to produce. The subtasks here, the data compilation and review, infrastructure evaluation, asset replacement, growth projections and capacity evaluations, creation of a GIS-based model. I mean, this is really, really complex, and fairly broad but deep at the same time, which is hard to come by. And you can sit up here and whine and yell that we haven't, that we're going to have double this and double that, but we got to do something. And this is getting us to the next stage. It's a plan that makes it coherent, and any future council's going to have to deal with it and not kick it down the road. The northern part of our city is related to Denver. We can't do anything about that. It's really unfortunate. That's my district. Those are people that live next door to me that are in the floodplain. We can't do anything about it because of that. We're going to have to. We got to figure out how we can get Denver's attention. But, this is a good plan. And I actually think it's a good price, too, because I've looked at some other things that we've done like this. There's nothing this comprehensive we've done. So I appreciate the hard work that you've put into it, and I'm going to call for if we can move ahead. I don't see anybody else. Let's please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is 11C3, this is revised council policy manual. Staff recommends city council approve by motion the second draft of the revised, is it really only the second draft? It seems like it's like the 15th draft of the revised city council policy manual of those sections upon which they achieve consensus, and readopt the ethics policy as a separate ordinance for inclusion within the city code. And our city attorney, Allison McKinney Brown, is here to answer any questions from, you want any comments?
I think at this point, even though we're calling it the second draft, the reality is you've seen it 15 times. So I stand for questions.
Are there any questions for City Attorney? Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
I have a question on page 23 of 24, where it's talking about personnel and meeting with city officers. It says, on or before the first regular meeting in March of each year, the city council will meet with the city attorney in executive session for attorney-client privilege. The city attorney shall present an annual report of activities and legal services rendered by the city attorney's office and any outside legal counsel. Does that mean we're only going to get one report every year about all the legal counsel that happened during the year?
I hope not. I like updating council on what's happening with my department, but I did think it was important, and I noticed, again, I went with what some of the rest of the nearby cities were doing with that. I wanted to make sure that it was mandated that we had to meet at least annually. Just for a general overview of where we're at. Things happen and change so quickly that it's just nice to count on the fact that once a year we get to sit down and go over everything. But I can't imagine whether I'm the city attorney or anyone else is ever the city attorney, because this should go well into the future, that when issues come up that the city attorney's office needs guidance with, it's incumbent on them to ask for an executive session for those specific purposes.
So I guess my question is, do we need to put it in the policy manual that we need updated litigation reports on a regular basis? Do we need that information in here?
You can put anything you want to within the council policy manual. One of the issues that we've been going back and forth on is whether or not to use email to communicate attorney-client privilege materials, because it's so difficult to remember that those are attorney-client privileged and not to violate attorney-client privilege. And so there are issues associated with that, and I think each council is going to figure that out as they become a body, how they want to deal with those kind of things. But I thought as a starting point, I would throw in, there has to be an annual meeting.
So, and I think also one thing that we could talk about is, before you came on board, we were getting, we just got a litigation report. I mean, you have given us some that are pretty simple, and we just got it in a manila envelope at a council meeting, in written form, then it wasn't mailed, and it just said confidential on there.
I think when you were the mayor and you and I were trying to work out some options, I think that's an option you and I came up with, and we did that once. I think the last 3 or 4 months, I've just done an emailed version because the council has said that that would be fine with them and that they would be careful not to violate attorney-client privilege for the rest of the body. Again, as each council and each mayor develops, I think they'll come up with a plan on how they want to communicate that information.
Except for my concern is as long as it's taken us to get through this, that future councils, you know, wouldn't necessarily want to take all this time going through this, so.
Again, it's your document, and I've given you my best ideas without being overwhelming, but in the end, it's your document.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Nope.
Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve 11C3, Council Policy Manual.
Thank you, Member Martinez. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Wink. All right, any further discussion about this? Councilmember Martinez?
I just want to thank City Attorney and Deputy City Manager Hargrove for helping us through this. We've talked about it for years, and thanks to Council for all the discussions to get to this place.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further discussion, please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. On to 11C4. Staff requests City Council approve by motion the handbook for boards, commissions, and committees. City Attorney Allison McKinney Brown again is ready to answer questions.
Yeah, and I stand for any questions.
Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve 11C4?
I move to approve agenda item 11C4.
A second.
All right, we're in a discussion, or do you have, go ahead and ask a question if you have one.
Well, I'll make a comment. On multiple appointments on page 9, it was not changed. It was not what we agreed upon about quasi-judicial boards. It says generally no non-elected person shall serve on more than one board, commission, or committee at any one time. Anything to the contrary herein notwithstanding, an individual may be appointed to serve on 2 boards, commissions, or committees if the individual applies for the appointment or reappointment and the individual is otherwise eligible for appointment or reappointment. And 3, no other qualified individual submits an application to one or more of the impacted boards, commissions, or committees. And that is not what we decided on.
I actually believe that is what we decided on, but we didn't all agree. And because we can get ourselves in a place where things might be difficult to place somebody, that we did actually allow for that, and that's why it's written the way it is. It does not mandate that, it simply allows it so that if there's someone we need and somebody's got the background for it, it does not allow quasi-judicial people to serve on 2. Right, seeing no further discussion, please vote.
Mayor, I had a comment.
Go ahead, Member Barentine.
I appreciate that we've been going around about this for a long time. A lot of times we had to delay this because it's became a very lengthy document and then became lengthier. Most of the comments that I've made about some of the conflict of interest, what the Mayor Pro Tem just brought up, as we went through and agreed on things, I don't believe that they got in there. When we put requirements onto boards and commission members that this council doesn't even have to adhere to, I think that we're overstretching our bounds. I'm not going to support it. Maybe when we're with a council that's, we can do this a little faster. Maybe we can go ahead and respect the changes that we're making and do it in a timely manner. But none of them are none of them were put in there. I don't find it funny, Mayor, that sometimes when we're going through things that the minority of this council gets ignored. So none of them got incorporated. They got brought up. They don't get discussed because not in the majority of council. So that's all the council, I'm sorry you find that funny, Mayor. I really do. You represent all of us on this council as our leadership. So I'm entitled to the way that I feel about that and how that affects me. There were comments made about trying to do things to boards and commission members that do not even affect this under the code of conduct that are so broad that we have already seen this council try to do things to certain people that they just disagree with. And I think that that ought to be, I don't think that that ought to be in a policy. It's going to pass, and I have an objection to it, and I have a right to voice my objection.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? I will respond to that. I am simply laughing at your comment that it's, if we have another council, maybe we can get through this in a timely manner. I think we have actually delayed this many, many, many times because we were trying to get you to agree with it or at least come to some consensus. It's fine. We may not. I think it's maybe a little bit like sausage here. So, Councilmember Cuesta.
I'll pass. Thank you.
All right. Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes and 2 nays, the 2 nays being Mayor Pro Tem Russell and Councilmember Barentine.
Okay, next is agenda item 12, general discussion, Mayor's choice. Last week was the Water Sewer Board. Actually, we did talk about the Water Sewer Stormwater Master Plan project. Well, 2 of us council members were there. I did not hear any of these questions at all during that evening. So, but I'm glad that we passed it. I think it's really needed. The Tri-Cities Homelessness Group met on Thursday morning last week, and the family study has begun, I think just sort of in the last week or so. They're still waiting on the signatures from all 3 cities for the second, or the other part of it, which is the chronic homelessness. In the meantime, Matt Meyer from the Metro Denver Housing Initiative and someone from DOLA is going to start working with us every Thursday to try and work on some low-hanging fruit of things that we can be doing now as we're waiting on the data and some of the perspective, the qualitative study. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. I have gotten several phone calls this weekend of people who are very worried about an overall anti-improvement tone in the city and asking, can I ensure that, there's not going to be so anti-everything. And I told them, I said, you need to come to the council meeting if that's what you're referring to, because it's fairly, it's open, people can come and say that. But I just want to register some voices of people who think that we're heading in some right directions that we don't always hear. People don't like to come to this meeting. They don't find it helpful sometimes. It's unfortunate. But anyway, we are missing other voices, and I just want to say that. The last thing is tomorrow morning, and maybe I stole your thunder, members here, the chamber has a business and breakfast here at the City Center at 7:30, talking about some of the city center development, and community development staff will be there. So that's at 7:30 tomorrow morning. That's it for me tonight. So council members' choice. I'm assuming whoever it is that wants to put this consideration of an executive session will jump in first. Councilmember Barentine?
Is this part of, should I do my council member choice first or do this? Is it part
I
of
suppose we could go through our council members' choices first and then bring it back to this. Would that be what you prefer?
Okay. I respectfully would disagree with the mayor, at least on my end of town. They're very positive. We got a lot of stuff moving forward. They're very energized on our end of town. They're very happy that we stopped the 316 apartment units from going through and putting more burden on their lifestyle, their infrastructure, and they're pretty happy with the energy that's going on. I got a little section of District 3 there that's starting to look like a little bit of Pearl Street, and it's fun, and people are enjoying themselves, and they see some change coming because there's investment coming in and energy, and it's positive, and it's awesome. So they think we're moving forward, and I'm really excited about that. One of the things that is helped that is, and I want to bring up part of what the city manager had brought up about trying to get some additional community involvement, and wanted to acknowledge that the Citizen Academy just started, and that we've had
I want to thank everybody who did that program. After reviewing the program's success in Littleton in 2007, I fought to have that Citizen Academy program brought to Englewood. And the Citizens Academy first class started just a few months after I left council. It was in February of 2008. And I'm glad to see that since then 250 citizens have taken the time, and along with the hard work of our staff, I do appreciate that. Prior to that, we had an award-winning Neighborhood Watch program, and that amassed a lot of volunteers. It assigned block captains, monthly and quarterly meetings, and it empowered communication. Neighbors helping neighbors was one of the themes that she had, along with an unprecedented support for National Night Out neighborhood events that were crucial to creating community and partnerships with our police and service. And I applaud our new city manager for knowing the value of these programs to our community and his desire to remove the obstacles that limit the expansion of these programs in Inglewood, to bring some of them back and continue the ones that are working well. I think you've got a good start with 250 alum having gone through the Citizen Academy program, and that reviving the Neighborhood Watch program and creating a strong support for National Night Out, as you've already mentioned, is critical to our communities. I would do one council request on that, however. When citizens were a little confused about the date change for this last Citizen Academy, it happened on the 4th, it went out, and then it got changed, and all of the dates for the service changed just 2 weeks later to a different day and a different time thing. So if we could change that. Also, when they went to check from what happened on Nextdoor, the notification, the website is not up to date. It says the next class is coming spring of 2019. So if we could change that along with the anticipation of the new 2019 application, so it just looks very outdated, and of course they couldn't get the correct information then when they went on there, and I don't want them to just have to rely on Nextdoor for that. But I applaud you for wanting to make sure that these programs are still doing well and go forward. Then the sewer line Cora request, if I could just go ahead and put that in as a council request as well, for the emergency plan for any kind of sewer. That was put in by members that were part of the board for that connector district, and that was of concern to them. That created an emergency for them as well, and so I want to make sure we're working good with our partners on there. I don't know if we're going to need to do an executive session or not. I had on the 27th of August requested information, and I will at least read just the part that I am concerned about, and you guys can decide whether you want to have an executive session or not. I'm concerned about information that we got. But council should be notified of any legal actions that could impact the city and the citizens of Inglewood that we represent. It is not my understanding that there's any exemption for personnel issues or for the city attorney's office to subjectively decide which legal actions should be shared with the elected officials. That's the first one, is that I don't think that we're getting that notification. And the second is that we need to be able to communicate with each other without it going through either the city manager's office or the city attorney's office, where they believe that they have the right to reword or interpret the request of a council person or the information of the council person wanting to go to other council. It is those two issues. And I would appreciate going into executive session to get the legal advice on how we're going to get information on lawsuits against the city. And be notified in a timely manner. And
Are you finished?
I believe I just asked a question, but if you want to just, that sounds kind of like you're dismissing it, but that's up to you.
I didn't hear a question of any sort, so.
Okay.
Councilmember Questa, do you want to go next?
Council is not being notified of the legal actions that could impact the city and the citizens of Inglewood that we represent. We were told that there were exemptions for personal issues. I do not believe that that's the case. We are being sued. We are having lawsuits filed against us, and we are not being notified in a timely manner. We had an executive session on the 24th of June for this very thing, and the information that we got was not accurate. And so we need to have an update on what was going on for that and get it resolved. But if you don't want to go into executive session, that's fine. I brought up my 2 issues.
All right. Councilmember Questa?
Thank you. A couple weeks back, I asked for additional language on the bulk plane, how we got to our current status.
I apologize, we're not going to answer my question. I thought at least we could.
I have the floor? Do I not have the floor?
I think that member Questa does, and that you gave up the floor. You said,
No, I didn't give up the floor. I asked council a question.
You know what? You are not in.
Okay.
So member Questa is speaking
I guess
right
the
now.
answer's no, then never mind. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Councilmember Barentine. Going back to my question, a couple weeks ago, I put in a request for information regarding the bulk plane, how we got to our current status, what other options there might be or avenues we might have to consider removing it, going back to where we were prior. I haven't seen it come back on the 9/12 council update, nor the one prior. Has that been issued yet, and I'm just overlooking it?
Mayor Olson, Councilmember Questa, that's a great question. I believe I responded that we put that on the agenda for, and it's actually on the next agenda for the density discussion. So staff is preparing an extensive background and analysis of that exact question because we had also gotten the question from Councilmember Sierra. And so I apologize that may not have gotten to you. I may not have sent it, but we did go ahead and just schedule that for a council discussion.
I believe it's September 23rd, is that right? So it's next Monday.
Right.
Okay, very good. So it's going straight to study session?
Correct.
Very good. Second is short-term rental. We had initially kicked around having a vote on this prior to election. As I look at the calendar, we've got 3 council meetings before the election, with the 3rd one being the night before the election. Is that still or is that still a vote we're aiming to have? And if I understand correctly, that would involve 2 votes, a first and second reading?
Yeah, it would be 3 nights, public hearing, and then 2 first and second readings.
Is that the intention then for over the course of the next 3
meetings? If it goes exactly like it's set up, then it'll work, but if it doesn't, I mean, it's the council's pleasure. If we want to push this off, we certainly can.
I'd take that vote tonight, so I'll do it. I'm ready to take the vote myself.
Not on short-term rentals, but when we do the public hearing, right?
I would, yes, push that I would like to try and complete that vote before the election, would be my thought. Now, needless to say, well, if there's other thoughts on that, certainly happy to hear that out wherever the majority goes. But yeah, I think I'm ready to vote on that. After public hearing, of course, but yes.
So can I respond to that? So right now it is scheduled. It's scheduled for October 7th is a public hearing, and then first reading is 21st, and second reading is the November 4th.
Very good, thank you. That concludes it, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Wink?
Yep. So you've already mentioned most of this, the Water Sewer Board, members, directors DeAndre and Van Rye led discussion and updates on the water, sewer, and stormwater master plans, Big Dry Creek Diversion Project, and the Plaza Circle Drive construction, which is great. And my second point is that I'll be out of state on Monday, October 7 for work. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Let's see, I would like to do a council request to put on a near agenda study session, fixing the S3 pipes. That was a question that Ms. Hoffman brought up. So we need to discuss that. I also had a question from some constituents. What fund is the money to replace all the 80 A-ramps coming out of? Where's that money coming out of? Okay, thank you.
Are you finished?
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick updates. Had a great meeting with KEB last week. They did a recap of the litter cleanup at Cushing Park. That was a success. They also had a recap of the first weekend of household hazardous waste event. They had 260 cars, which is a lot of cars on the first day, so that was pretty cool. And then the following weekend, I don't have the numbers for that. They also talked about planning for the holiday lighting contest coming up here in December. And they do something that's kind of cool that I don't know that other boards and commissions do, but around this time each year, they take the time to evaluate the things that they have done this past year and what they want to do in the upcoming year. So it's like a brainstorming session. Where are they? Where do they want to go? And how are they going to adjust? I think it's a really cool exercise that they go through each year. So just want to give them a shout out for doing the work on that. Also had a good meeting with ETAC. Councilmember Sierra joined us, so that was nice. Also by folks from Bicycle Colorado. We talked about the Idaho stop. Safety stops. Colorado safety stop, Idaho stop. A variety of names. Talked about the single trash hauler initiative, talked about the crosswalks that we talked about in study session this evening. Oh gosh, we talked about a whole lot of other stuff after you left. We talked about a whole lot of stuff. Great group, and that's it.
Point of information.
Sure.
Do you, in the ETAC committee, do you have citizens come and have input to the committee? So did anybody come to the committee and talk about input for single hauler trash?
No citizens came at this last meeting.
Thank you.
Councilmember, are you finished?
Yes.
Councilmember
Oh,
Sierra?
sorry, one more
Nope,
thing.
Sorry.
Congratulations to the city manager for appointing an official deputy city manager in
Yes.
Hargrove. Congratulations. I'm done now.
Councilmember Sierra.
So to answer Member Cuesta's question about the STRs, I've actually thought about it just because we had a discussion, I think it came up during council the last meeting where whether or not it was right to keep it on the dates that we currently have it on or if we should push it out. My concern with pushing it out is that the new council is going to have to weigh in, or it's going to have to wait 3-4 months before something happens with that. So I'm okay either way to do it, whether we want to push it off or not, but I'm fine keeping it as it is just because of that concern of how long it may take for the new council to get up to speed on that and still have that, the language that we have currently with the STRs. And then I second, so Amy stole all my thunder tonight, so ETAC, great meeting in terms of the safety stop. Dorothy, congratulations on accepting the position of deputy city manager. I'm happy for you, and I'm glad to still keep you in that position. So thank you very much. And then also the breakfast with breakfast with business or business with breakfast tomorrow, 7:30. So I'll be there. Mayor, you'll be there as well with the chamber. So looking forward to the event.
Thank you. City Manager's report.
Mayor, Council, I just have one item. The Historic Preservation Commission has made a request to have a joint meeting with you all and have suggested a study session. So just wanted to see if anyone would object to us scheduling that for an upcoming study session. We'd just like to make sure. Historic Preservation Commission, I think they've done some recent work on the neighborhood kind of side and would like to talk to you all about that. Is that okay?
Let's find a way to put them in. Agenda item 14, City Attorney's report.
No report this evening.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Not quite 10:30. Member Sierra, but close.
I'm off the hook.
Did you win the bet?
Yes.
So is the mayor manager meeting at 8:30 or is the?
It's right here.
You made it.
Understeal.
I thought you were going to say more about the items.
Nah.
Elaine.
You said what needed to be said.
Elaine.
More of it's coming forward.
Elaine.
It's coming forward at some point.
She needs her headset.
He doesn't want you.
Elaine.
No.
You're still awake.
I asked him to. He doesn't want to come in. No.
I was curious about that.
Even during the Parks and Rec meeting, he sits outside.
Really?
Yeah. So, no, it wasn't, I give them the choice.